Chapter 194. Just as he finished speaking, an arrow pierced through the air, directly piercing through the chest of a person who was standing relatively far away. Ugh! A muffled sound rang out, and everyone looked towards the source of the sound, just in time to see the man raising his hand to cover his chest, a look of disbelief on his face. They saw his burly body slowly fall backwards, blood flowing out from his completely shattered heart, staining the ground red. Before he died, his eyes were still wide open as if he had seen a malicious ghost. The scene was creepy. Could it be that there were really malicious ghosts in the forest? Don't panic. You are a man. Why are you afraid of ghosts? The leader shouted, which brought everyone back to their senses. He raised his sword and walked a few steps toward the direction where the arrow came from with a gloomy face. The grass and shrubs could not withstand the sharpness of the sword and were chopped down to the ground. No, still no trace. Where was the ambusher hiding? The leader looked at the ground where there was no trace of a living person. His expression was like a wall with a few cracks. Another scream was heard. Another man was pierced through the chest by an unknown arrow. The direction of the arrow was far away from the leader. The leader hurried back and saw that the man was dead. Just like the previous man, he was shot in the heart and died. He checked the wound and could no longer control his violent emotions. Since he began to work for the Mengs, he was used to being flattered and flattered. When had he ever been humiliated like this? He was toyed with by a bunch of nobodies who came out of nowhere. What was even more hateful was that the other party had never revealed themselves from the beginning to the end. Playing tricks on us. We don't need to be afraid of them. The leader stood up and said to the others, "Are you all stupid? They pointed their arrows at you and you didn't feel it at all. You are still standing in twos and threes." The leader's scolding made the others tremble. They did not dare to be so careless and spread out in twos and threes. Instead, they formed a more orderly formation. Compared to the unknown malicious ghost, the leader was more terrifying. Seeing that, Jiang Pingji had already quietly moved to another place. How stupid. It doesn't feel challenging at all. Jiang Pingji smiled. The enemy was in the light while she was in the dark. She had the initiative in her hands. Regardless of whether the enemy gathered in a group or dispersed in twos or threes, it was all useless unless they could feel her breath or detect her murderous actions in advance. Killing aura seemed illusory, but it really existed. It was just that it couldn't be touched or seen. Some martial artists worked hard to train themselves and improve their five senses. They would vaguely develop a mysterious intuition. When others stared at them, they would feel it, not to mention the killing intent that was filled with malice. The leader was indeed capable. His five senses had also reached such a level that he could sense the killing intent and stares of others. However, how could Jiang Pingji's standard be the same as theirs? A genetic warrior whose killing intent could be sensed by others was already the worst of the worst. It was simply impossible for him to participate in a mission. Jiang Pingji also had rich experience in sniping and killing. She succeeded every time. If she could not perfectly restrain this killing intent and reduce her presence by 100%, according to the five senses of the people in the future, it would not be called a sneak attack. It would be telling the enemy her position and trying to kill them. Then what was there to play? The audience in the streaming room was watching excitedly. It seemed that after the shock of seeing blood for the first time, they had calmed down. Wanyue, #laughter cry. I have a déjà vu of a high-level golden godly outfit massacring the novice players in the novice village. A's Huohua. It's obviously a godly character who has ascended to immortality. Zhongfei Xingqian of last night, it's better to be crushed. Feels good. I like the feeling of killing a bunch of small monsters with one slash. Jiang Pingji curled her lips. Huddling together would only make them die more quickly. Host V, I'll show you what it means to kill two birds with one stone. As soon as she finished speaking, the arrow had already pierced through the air. Jiang Pingji changed to another place without looking back. Swoosh, an arrow pierced through the air. The crowd only noticed its existence when it got close, but it was too late. Another two. Jiang Pingji did not have to look to know that she had taken down two more enemies. At that moment, the number of casualties had reached a terrifying number. They did not see the shadow of the ambushers from beginning to end, but their companions fell one after another. The leader was safe and sound in the middle, but the two people who had been killed were very close to him. They fell in the direction of the leader. With such archery skills, they can't be bandits. The leader pushed the body that fell on him away. A trace of unwillingness flashed across his face. However, he also knew that if they continued to stay in the dense forest, they would only silently lose more people. Could it be the people in Hejian County seeking revenge? one of the followers guessed with fear. The leader snorted coldly and said contemptuously, "Those people don't have the guts to. If this was not the case, that was not the case." Then who was the culprit? Could it be that a malicious ghost really appeared in broad daylight? For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. Seeing them retreat and then looking at the reserves in the quiver, Jiang Pingji's smile was somewhat evil. Since they had already set foot on the road to hell, how could they escape? It was not difficult for Jiang Pingji to shoot while moving. The only difficulty was that she had to pay attention to hiding while moving. The atmosphere became more terrifying and gloomy. The tense atmosphere and the shadow of death shrouded everyone's hearts. Dong, the head of one of the followers who fell at the back of the group, was pierced through from the temple by an arrow. He was directly nailed to a tree trunk not far away. "What are you panicking for? Retreat." The leader heard the strange sound at the back of the group. His heart suddenly sank. He knew that another life had been quietly taken. The same scene happened one after another. Jiang Pingji was like the most experienced hunter. It was as if she had thoroughly understood the dense forest. No matter how the group of people ran or panicked, she could maintain a fairly safe range. She was like an experienced cat, and those people were the mice that she chased. She destroyed their psychological defenses bit by bit. When she was done playing with them, she would kill them with one blow. The leader was about to have a nervous breakdown after being shot one after another. Even though he looked calm on the surface, he still could not hide the guilt in his heart. Yes, guilt. He couldn't sense where the arrows were coming from, and he didn't know what their target was. Chapter 195. No way. It couldn't go on like this. The only way was to leave the dense forest and go to an open area. When there was nothing to hide behind, he wanted to see how the enemy would attack. In this regard, Jiang Pingji could clearly tell the enemy that those who deserved to die would still die. It had little to do with where they died. It was not easy to escape from the dense forest. Originally he had brought 20 followers with him, but now there were only 2 left. The closer they got to the exit of the dense forest, the more frequently Jiang Pingji shot. Seeing that they had escaped, any normal person would feel relaxed. It was also the best opportunity to attack. However, when the leader brought the remaining 2 survivors to the place where they had rested, what they saw were 4 bodies lying in a pool of blood. The leader's eyes were wide open, and his fierce look scared the 2 followers who followed him. The only survivor was the follower who had gone to fetch water and was lucky enough to survive. What? Of the 5 people who stayed, 4 were dead and only this one was alive? Of the 3 people who went to fetch water, 2 were dead and only this one was alive? The anger in the leader's heart could no longer be suppressed. He strode forward and grabbed the follower's collar. "Tell me, did you kill them? Tell me, are you a spy for those villains? Did you deliberately lure us there?" The leader glared at the follower, who had been scared to the point of delirium. His face was smeared with sticky blood. The audience in the streaming room was speechless. Wait, what kind of weird development was this? Why did they suddenly have internal strife? No, internal strife was internal strife. Why did they suspect that the unlucky guy who had been scared twice by the streamer was the murderer? Fengji Liaoyuan, haha, I feel sorry for him. First he was scared twice by the streamer, and now he's suspected to be the murderer. Shuang Xiang, sorry, really very sorry. No, I laughed so hard that my stomach hurts. Did the leader become a stick? Lao Siji Lianming, I bet a spicy stick. This is definitely an Easter egg left by the streamer on purpose to test their intelligence. It was no wonder that the viewers in the live streaming channel were so happy. This turn of events had shocked everyone. The followers around the leader were all brought here by himself. He knew everyone's background, so it was impossible for there to be a spy. Of course, it was also possible under extreme circumstances. Some viewers in the live stream room were mocking him, but naturally, there were also people who had different opinions. Chestnut is delicious. Am I the only one who thinks the leader's reaction is normal? After being scared by the streamer so many times, and seeing the people around him die one after another, the psychological pressure was unimaginable. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to maintain a normal level of thinking, and they would definitely subconsciously suspect the most suspicious person. Who was the most suspicious person at the moment? It must be the survivor. Putting himself in their shoes, if he was one of the members of the team, facing a completely clueless enemy, and every time the enemy attacked, one member of the team would definitely die, and no one would know if he or she would be the next target, the fear of death lingered in one's heart. The Grim Reaper's footsteps were hot on one's heels. Even a person with a strong mental defense would collapse in an instant under such a dense frequency of attacks. However, from God's perspective, the leader's judgment was indeed laughable. At this time the audience in the live broadcast room was silent, and then they agreed to speak. Not to mention anything else, they just said that the host had too much bad taste. Jiang Pingji smiled. Her bad taste was yet to come. Tell me, did you kill them? Tell me. The leader grabbed the other's collar and roared as he questioned. At the same time, Jiang Pingji steadily raised the bow, drew an arrow and aimed at the target. Swoosh! In the next moment, blood burst out and covered his face. His neck seemed to be strangled by an invisible hand, and it forcibly stopped him from speaking. That's bad taste. Jiang Pingji snorted coldly, and another wave of 666 flew by in the live broadcast room. My host, you're amazing. Jiang Pingji was too lazy to struggle with the last few shrimps. She raised her hand, put her finger to her lips and whistled. The horse neighed and the sound of hooves came from afar. A vigorous white figure galloped out of the dense forest. The other horses seemed to be summoned, and they all ran toward the white horse. The scene was chaotic. Game over. Jiang Pingji drew her bow for the last time, and killed 2 birds with 1 stone. She took the lives of the 2 people beside the leader. She had said that 1 messenger was enough. Let's go. Pack up and go home. The white horse galloped toward her. Jiang Pingji smiled, ran 2 steps forward and jumped on the horse's back. The pure-blooded warhorse of the northern borderline was indeed worthy of its reputation. Only then did the leader see who had ambushed them. Just as he was about to draw his bow and shoot an arrow, the horse galloped wildly, kicking up a cloud of dust and blocking his line of sight. All he could see was the buttocks of the horse and the small figure that had already become a small dot in the distance. The leader was so angry that he threw the bow and arrow in his hand to the ground. None of the 27 followers around him survived. Who is it? That's too much. The leader spat out these words through gritted teeth, and a smell of iron spread in his mouth. The only thing he could be thankful for was that his horse had a good relationship with him, and it was not affected by the white horse. Otherwise he would have to walk to the next station with an empty stomach. In the future, I will take revenge. Jiang Pingji did not care whether he wanted to take revenge or not. Even his life was deliberately spared. If it were not for the messenger, he would have died and gone to hell to show off his arrogance to the king of hell. Jiang Pingji hung up the bow and put the quiver back. She leisurely sat on the horse's back and let the white horse walk around as it pleased. She led a group of brothers to look for food. The horses were intimidated by the white horse's imposing manner, so they all became obedient. It seems that you are the king of horses. Jiang Pingji saw that and patted the horse's neck with a smile. The horse responded with a loud snort. Its beautiful and smooth mane swayed slightly with its movements, brushing against her wrist and making her feel a little itchy. What a proud little girl. Yes, it was a mare, but it was more hot-tempered than any stallion. It liked to kick its hooves at the slightest provocation. Jiang Pingji carefully counted the number of horses. There were exactly 27 of them. Host V, this is a big win. It seems that robbing the enemy to help me is good for my health. What do you mean by robbing the enemy to help me? Host, your worldview has fallen to the ground. Do you want to bend down and pick it up? The viewers in the streaming room said that they had lived for a long time, but they liked Jiang Pingji's carefree and unrestrained behavior. So, their worldview had been led astray by the host. Chapter 196. Jiang Pingji jumped down from the horse's back. The white horse was very understanding. It rubbed her cheek affectionately and then ran to the side to nibble on the grass. I wonder when I can eat pears. Looking at the pear trees by the banks of the Yishui River, Jiang Pingji took a deep breath. Her nose was filled with the fresh fragrance of pears. At this time, no one was holding a gathering on the bank of the Yi River, so there was no one on the bank at all, except for the constantly moving horse butts. Jiang Pingji walked straight to the shore. She kicked off her wooden clogs and took off her socks. She dipped her feet into the water and sighed. A cool feeling spread from the tip of her toes to the rest of her body. Jiang Pingji placed her hands on the stones by the river and leaned back slightly to look at the sky. Shushu loves lowly. I was quietly lurking, but the host's feet blew me out. Lao Ciji Lianming, I think this is today's benefit. The foot control group is blessed. Lu Shi was, after all, a spoiled child. Whether it was riding a horse, shooting a gun, or running, his skin was always a little delicate. Now his feet had a few red blisters burning hot. When he touched the cold river water, he shivered in comfort. Looks like I still need to practice more. It's not good to get blisters so easily. Jiang Pingji was bored. She used the tip of her foot to stir up ripples on the surface of the water. When the blisters were no longer so hot and uncomfortable, she prepared to go ashore. However, before she could pull her feet out of the water, she found a tall young man in a lake blue scholarly robe standing not far away. He looked to be about 18 or 19 years old, with skin as delicate as flawless porcelain, bright eyes, red lips, and white teeth. His thin, moderately thick lips were curved. This was a face that easily gave people a good impression. It seemed that he was smiling at everyone. However, at this moment, the young man pursed his lips tightly with a hint of anger. The bunch of people in the live streaming room who were obsessed with looks started to shout again, and all kinds of flattering comments flooded the bullet screen. Durian-flavored milk? I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore. What a beautiful young man. Although I know that ancient times were very cruel and dangerous, the moment I saw this young man, all those hardships go to hell. Kojiao Chi-fan, I'm not convinced. Why were the ancient people so good-looking? Didn't they all say that they were ugly? Host Jingjing Shanghua, although the host is my true love, the moment I saw the young man, I wanted to climb the wall. Such bullet screens almost blocked Jiang Pingji's vision. In the end, she had no choice but to block some of them. Jiang Pingji looked around and confirmed that there was no one else but her. Did that mean that the young man was angry at her? The young man's porcelain-like face showed a little anger. He looked at her accusingly as if she had done something infuriating. Oh, what else had she done other than soaking her feet and raising more than 20 horses? Could it be that those free-range horses went to take advantage of him? Just as he was puzzled, a bullet screen in the live broadcast room inspired him. Ace Huahua. Haha, by the way, is that handsome young man drinking water downstream? It seemed that he was quite angry. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She lowered her head to look at her feet that were still soaking in the water. She then raised her head to look at the young man's almost red face. She was speechless. She was to blame? She calmly put on her socks and wooden clogs. Jiang Pingji whistled and the big white horse galloped over. Behind it, there were a total of 27 well-proportioned horses of different colors. Obviously, the big white horse had become the leader of the horses. Jiang Pingji didn't even need to deliberately drive it. Jiang Pingji murmured, "Nowadays, horses are becoming intelligent." She sat on the horse and glanced at the young man who was still standing in the same place. She moved the reins and signaled the big white horse to go over. Jiang Pingji sat on the horse and bowed to the young man. "May I know your name?" The young man was very tall, but he was still a head shorter than the big white horse. When the big white horse lowered its head and snorted at him, the young man hurriedly stepped back with a bit of panic on his face. Seeing that, Jiang Pingji patted the horse's neck and signaled the little girl not to bully him on purpose. "Judging from your clothes, you don't look like a local." The young man calmed down and looked at her with mixed feelings. After a while he bowed back and said, "I'm from Langyi. You can call me Hanyu." Hanyu? What about his courtesy name? Jiang Pingji subconsciously thought of this question. After all, the ancient people's naming habits were really annoying. But then she remembered that only close friends or elders could use courtesy names. She narrowed her eyes and asked, "My name is Lu Shi. I'm a local of Hejian. I saw you staring at me just now. Do you have any difficulties?" The young man's face became even uglier when he heard the question. Jiang Pingji laughed in her heart. The audience in the streaming room complained that she was too mean. Hanyu was choked by her straightforward question, but he couldn't just say that he just drank some water to quench his thirst. Hanyu's face became even uglier when he thought of that. He had no choice. His water bag was empty and there was still some distance to go into the city. He could only fetch water from the spot. He didn't expect that someone would soak her feet in the water. Should he be glad that she was not using the toilet? Hanyu lowered his head subconsciously and looked at Jiang Pingji's feet, which were wearing socks. He felt a little uncomfortable in his stomach. Jiang Pingji said again, "I was rude just now. My feet hurt a little because of the long journey. I just soaked my feet for a while and found that you were looking at me like that. I thought that the horses around me provoked you. Did they do anything to you?" Hanyu's pale face looked much better after hearing that. His white cheeks became rosy again. "The horses didn't make fun of me. Are they war horses?" Hanyu said. He glanced at the horses that Jiang Pingji mentioned. He seemed to find something and his pupils slightly shrank. "I don't know if they are war horses, but they are definitely good horses." Jiang Pingji smiled and stroked the mane of the big white horse. The horse rubbed against her palm intimately and licked it from time to time. "I took Whitey out for 2 laps and let it go to find food by itself. I didn't expect that it would bring back so many horses. I was also very surprised." Hanyu was very surprised. He looked at the big white horse with sparkling eyes and said, "This horse has a well-proportioned body and strong hooves. Its eyes are full of intelligence and it has a ferociousness that normal horses don't have. Is this a good horse from the northern borderline? It should be. My father specially sent it to me. It is said that it is a good horse that was carefully selected from the royal horse farm in the northern borderline. Jiang Pingji said, I don't know much about horses, but Whitey is full of intelligence. It seems that it can understand what I said. In the whole family, I am the only one who is close to it. Jiang Pingji's words were really shameless. Chapter 197. Compared to the white horse, Han Yu was more concerned about the other 27 horses. They were from the Meng's horse farm. Horses of such quality were usually provided to the Meng's army. Outsiders couldn't buy them. Now there were 27 more horses, which made Han Yu feel a little uneasy. So Han Yu asked, Do you know who the owner of these horses is? Jiang Pingji sneered. She never asked for the names of people she killed and there was no need to. They were all dead anyway. But she said, I don't know. Do you know? Han Yu said with certainty, This is a fine horse from the stable of the Mengs in Sangzhou. Only those with a high status in the Meng's army are qualified to own such a fine horse. Lu Langjun is in trouble? Jiang Pingji said carelessly. Why? It's just a few animals carrying people. How can they kill people? Han Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He suddenly put on a serious face and said, Not only will they kill people but they will also implicate the whole family. Is it that serious? Han Yu saw that she didn't believe him, so he explained the stakes to her very seriously. Don't doubt me, Lu Langjun. There was a tragedy in Meng County in Sangzhou. Someone stole a horse belonging to the Mengs, and the whole family was involved. They were trampled to death on the horse farm. I didn't steal these horses. They came here by themselves. Jiang Pingji said seriously, but what you said reminds me of one thing. These horses are indeed easy to get into trouble. I have to find a way to get rid of them as soon as possible. Han Yu was speechless. Jiang Pingji smiled coldly. Langjun, you said that I'm a thief. Since I've already taken the blame, why don't I just sell all the horses and make some money? No matter how angry the Mengs are, they have to find me first. Han Yu was alert and smart. He immediately understood why Jiang Pingji's attitude toward him had changed so much. He immediately apologized. You don't have to be so angry, Lu Langjun. I used that tragedy as an example to tell you to think twice before you act. The Meng family is powerful and arrogant. Ordinary people can't fight against them. I have no intention of slandering you for stealing. Jiang Pingji tightened her grip on the horse's belly and the white horse took 2 steps forward. She said proudly, It doesn't matter. Since I dared to accept these troublesome little fellows, I naturally have my own reasons. Seeing her like this, Han Yu didn't continue to insist. Maybe she really had the right to be arrogant, and he would only annoy her if he tried to dissuade her. The two of them had only met by chance and there was a misunderstanding at the beginning. Naturally, there was nothing much to talk about and they soon parted ways. The livestream viewers felt that it was a pity. It was rare to see such a handsome, sunny boy. It would be a pity if they did not lick his boots for a while. To avoid encountering people who knew about horses, Jiang Pingji took a shortcut and leisurely let the white horse carry her to the farm. Wow, what a big horse. So high. The children in the village had never seen so many horses. A bunch of naughty children came forward, their faces full of curiosity. Everyone wanted to reach out and touch the horse's hooves, but Jiang Pingji didn't allow it. War horses were hot-tempered. If they accidentally angered one of them, they would lose their lives if they were rewarded with a hoof. Langjun, these? Jiang Pingji jumped off the horse. Xiaoyu, you came just in time. Ask Coach Ming to bring the horses into the farm. Remember to tie them all up. Suku thought that was not the point. The point was, didn't Langjun always say that he was very poor, and that he needed to be thrifty here and there, even to the extent of losing his mind? So, where did he get the money to buy so many war horses? Even though Suku didn't know much about horses, he still had the basic insight. He didn't know how good the horses were, but he knew that they were indeed excellent. So, where did Langjun kill people and set fires? How did he get so many? Suku accidentally blurted out what was on his mind. Jiang Pingji tilted her head and stared at him, which made his hair stand on end, as if he was going to explode in the next second. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pingji just nodded seriously and said, Xiaoyu, you know me best. Suku was dumbfounded. The viewers in the live stream almost burst out laughing. Although he was not as handsome as Han Yu, Suku was still very handsome. Langjun, you really killed people and set fires? Suku didn't know how to react. However, when he saw Jiang Pingji's half-smile, Suku suddenly realized that something was wrong. I killed people but I didn't set fires, Jiang Pingji said seriously and added, setting fire to the forest is a serious crime. In Jiang Pingji's era wood resources were scarce. Only the rich and the aristocratic families could afford pure wood furniture. In order to protect the decreasing forest resources, the relevant regulations were introduced. Setting fire to the forest was a serious crime and it could lead to death. Suku heard that and felt slightly relieved. No, he didn't set fire so he couldn't kill people. At that moment he carefully counted the number of horses. Minus the one that belonged to his Langjun, there were 27 left. 27? Thinking about the number and the killing that his Langjun said, he seemed to understand something. Anyway, I took them from the Mengs. It doesn't cost me anything. Jiang Pingji raised her hand and patted Suku's shoulder. But the horses raised by the Mengs have special marks. People who know horses can easily recognize them. This is going to be a problem. Before Suku could react, Jiang Pingji had already made a decision. Find a way to sell them. They can probably be worth a lot of money. Sell the horses. Suku's mind flashed with the approximate market value of the horses. Horses used for transportation were usually not cheap, and a horse like this was worth dozens of times more. But won't it be a pity? Men always had some characteristics that never changed no matter what time it was. For example, men in Jiang Pingji's era had a special love for mechas. Some people even joked that mechas were men's true love. In this era, men seemed to be like this as well. They had a unique love for strong and healthy horses. Jiang Pingji said, I can keep them but I don't think it's necessary. I killed those lackeys of the Mengs and only left one alive to report back. If they know that these horses are in my hands. Suku was suddenly shocked and immediately sobered up. He was still very rational when it came to his personal interests and interests. If that's the case, we'd better find a way to sell the horses as soon as possible. It's fine even if the price is lower. We can't keep them and cause trouble. Suku had already started to calculate in his mind how much money and food the horses could bring them. Yes, but I don't know how to sell them. We'll need to find a slightly more professional person. Jiang Pingji smiled. The Mengs were a jinx to others, but they seemed to be a blessing to her. Chapter 198. According to Jiang Pingji, it would be better to sell the war horses so that the Mengs wouldn't trace them back to her. Suku even started to make a budget, but Meng Hun put forward a different opinion after he heard about it. I don't agree with your decision. The loss is too great. Meng Hun licked his dry lips and looked at the plump and strong war horses with a burning gaze. For a general, a horse that they liked was like a second companion. It's better to hide them in the mountains for a while and wait for the Mengs to die down before plotting other things. Jiang Pingji focused on the first sentence. How great is the loss? Meng Hun said, for example, a good war horse like this is worth 70 to 80 taels of silver. That's the price of a fair deal. If you sell it to a horse dealer privately, they will buy it at a much higher price. Usually they will reduce the price by 40 to 50%. That much? Jiang Pingji asked. That's at least a horse dealer with a conscience. If they bully someone who doesn't know the trade, they will be even worse. War horses are different. If they have internal injuries, they will be worthless. That's why they are more expensive. But if they are sold privately, the price will be reduced even more. Meng Hun sighed and raised his hand to stroke the mane of a maroon war horse. The horse was strong and the muscles under his palm were tight and full of strength. It was fascinating. Suku was in a dilemma. It would be a loss if he sold them, but it was too risky to keep them. Even if they were hidden deep in the mountains, they would still be found. Jiang Pingji looked down and thought for a while. I'll listen to you this time. Anyway, we got them out of nowhere. No matter how we deal with them, it won't be a loss. We will need to train riding and shooting in the future. With them, at least we don't have to buy extra horses. It will save us a lot of money. Suku asked, but if that's the case and someone finds their tracks and suspects? Jiang Pingji reacted quickly. When she agreed to Meng Hun's suggestion, she already had a solution in mind. It's not difficult. I originally wanted to move the troops training from the farm to the mountains, Jiang Pingji said. Jiang Pingji said, but not now. Find a way to hide these horses. It doesn't matter if they are exposed. The Mengs can't do anything to me, Jiang Pingji smiled innocently as she spoke. After all, I'm just a powerless aristocrat. How could I have ambushed 28 of them, killed 27 of them, and left one alive? Isn't it more believable to say that Meng Hun did it? Suku almost couldn't hold back the smile on his face. Before Meng Hun joined the team you could trick him, but now that he was a friend you still want to trick him like this? Do you have any shame? What was eye-opening was that Meng Hun actually felt that it made sense. That's true. Ordinary people would definitely think so. Although the young Lang Jun is skilled in martial arts, how could he be compared to the followers of the Meng family? These horses are in your hands. You can say that you bought them from a horse dealer in the black market. What can the Meng family do to you if they want to settle accounts with you? Meng Hun gave a simple and honest smile. If an ordinary person told the Meng family this, he or she would definitely be in trouble. But Jiang Pingji had someone to rely on. It was just 20 horses. The Meng family didn't lack them. What they lacked was an excuse. What they lacked was face. Jiang Pingji's reason was reasonable. Would the Meng family dare to go against the Lu family for 20 horses? If that's the case, these horses can be kept in the mountains. But they are hot-tempered. It's better to find someone who has experience in raising horses, so that they won't get hurt. Jiang Pingji made the final decision. Meng Hun's smile deepened. 27 horses. No matter what, he could at least get one, right? The maroon horse next to him was not bad. Both its appearance and temperament were to his liking. Suke saw that and secretly put his hand on his forehead. He had a headache. His Lang Jun killed and robbed people without saying a word. Even though it was the Meng family that was robbed and killed, his Lang Jun was born in a noble family. The Lu family didn't lack anything. Why did his Lang Jun become such a gangster? Meng Hun next to him was the same. He was fine before, but now he seemed to be affected by his Lang Jun. Oh, how long had it been since they hooked up? The speed of their influence was too fast. Suke looked like he had nothing left to live for. He watched Meng Hun call people to take the horses away. The food that these war horses usually eat should be different from that of ordinary horses, right? Meng Hun said, of course. They eat more carefully and more expensive. The veins on Suke's forehead bulged. Those horses were all masters who needed to be served. Alas, I hope the books will be sent to the Mengs soon. Otherwise, Lang Jun won't be able to keep them. Suke was in charge of the accounts. He knew the financial situation best. They still needed the support of the Lus. The entire troop, including 40 to 50 mouths and 27 horses, was counting on the Mengs. Meng Hun was speechless. One was marked by the company one kept. Maybe Meng Hun was not the only one who had changed. Suke had also become more shameless. Their family's Lang Jun was really poisonous. Feng Huayu, you made me look for you so hard. Feng Jin planned to find Jiang Pingji that day. He didn't expect to hear a familiar voice as soon as he got into the carriage. He opened the curtain. Hey, it was an acquaintance. Wenbin? Feng Jin got out of the carriage. The joy of meeting an old friend flashed across his young face. Why are you here? They greeted each other, and Feng Jin welcomed the good-looking young man in a lake blue scholar's robe into the door. I was preparing for the assessment. I wanted to invite you, but I didn't expect your third brother to tell me that you accompanied the fourth prince to Hejian. It's not far, so I took a detour. Maybe I could meet you. I saw you from afar as soon as I entered the city. The young man had a bright smile on his face. He was not as reserved as ordinary people. His eyebrows were full of vitality. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. Wenbin, you came at the right time. Do me a favor. What's wrong? Han Yu raised his eyebrows and smiled. Are you entangled with some passionate girl? They were friends who grew up together and they were the same age. Feng Jin let go of his usual calmness in front of Han Yu. Look at you. You are getting more and more improper. I really don't know how Master Yuan Jing taught you. Feng Jin patted Han Yu's shoulder and whispered, the fourth prince likes to hang out in the brothels, but he calls me out every time. I can't stand it. Could it be that the fourth prince is interested in Huayu's beauty? Han Yu had an indescribable expression on his face. Feng Jin coughed and lowered his voice. Of course not. I don't like to go to those brothels. He didn't like to go there, but he was called out to go there. It was okay to refuse him once or twice, but he refused him every time. Even a fool would know something was wrong. Chapter 199. Han Yu raised his eyebrows and teased, So, what do you want me to help you with? He doesn't know you well. If he wants to drive you away, just pretend that you don't understand. Wuma Jun went to the brothel every few days to make friends with Lu Shi. He liked to invite Feng Jin along every time. Now that Han Yu was here, Feng Jin had an excuse to get away. You should have just rejected him directly. What can a useless fourth prince do to you? You are just trying to save face, Han Yu said carelessly. Feng Jin was not valued, but he was still the second son of the Feng family. If he didn't want to do something, Wuma Jun couldn't force him to do it. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. A leopard couldn't change its spots. It was his nature and it wasn't easy to change it. Wuma Jun was annoying, but Feng Jin didn't want to offend the fourth prince yet. There was no need to make it ugly. Han Yu still had the same temperament. I haven't seen you for a few years. I thought you would be less temperamental after you became Master Yuanjing's disciple. I didn't expect it to get worse. Your temperament is quite similar to the good friend I've made recently. Perhaps the two of you will get along well. Han Yu raised his eyebrows and said with interest, there are not many people who can be praised by you, Feng Huayu. Not to mention that his temperament was similar to his. She is a wonderful person. Feng Jin thought of Jiang Pingji, and the smile on his face became wider. Han Yu was quite surprised. Tsk. Could it be that the good friend Huayu is talking about is actually a beautiful lady? Is she your confidant? I think you asked me to help you get rid of the fourth prince so that you could have some time to meet your confidant. His smile was so sweet that Han Yu felt like he was going to be blinded. Feng Jin's smile became more and more helpless after hearing what Han Yu said. Although his good friend was indeed a woman, she was not a confidant. He didn't know what Han Yu was thinking about. Of course it's not a wife and it's not a close female friend. It's a good friend. Wenbin can't slander Feng Jin's style just because of his experience. I originally wanted to introduce the two of you to each other, but now that I see that you have a big mouth, I think it's better to forget about it. Feng Jin and Han Yu were good friends who grew up together. They were as close as brothers and would occasionally make some harmless jokes. Hey, don't. He must be a rare young talent to be praised by Huayu. I want to get to know him. Only then did Feng Jin let go of Han Yu. If Wenbin had come a little later, I'm afraid I would have gone to find Lanting. Han Yu couldn't help but be interested in the Lanting that Feng Jin had mentioned. He wanted to see what kind of talent Lanting had. As a student of Master Yuanjing, Han Yu had seen too many young talents who claimed to be gifted by the heavens. One or two of them tried to be Master Yuanjing's disciples, but what was the result? It was either an exaggeration or an unworthy name. There were only a few people who could catch Han Yu's eye. Han Yu said, it's not too late to visit now. Feng Jin hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right. Because of the addition of Han Yu, Feng Jin specially wrote a visiting card. Otherwise it would be too rude to bring someone he didn't know directly to his door. Unfortunately, the concierge told Feng Jin that his Langjun had been away for some time. Did Lanting say when he would come back? Feng Jin asked in a good temper. The gatekeeper thought for a moment and said, Langjun only said that he would come back before the city gate is locked. Before the city gate is locked? Looking up at the sky, it was obvious that he couldn't wait any longer. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble you to tell Lanting that I've been here. The gatekeeper said respectfully, it's no trouble at all. Langjun is my Longjuan's good friend. This is what I should do. Feng Jin had no choice but to return to the carriage. Han Yu was playing with the jade tassel hanging from his waist with his fingers. Are you not at home? Feng Jin nodded. He thought for a moment and said, since you are here, why don't you go to Yaoji? Yaoji? Another strange name. It seemed that Huayu had made a lot of good friends while he was away from Shangjing. Feng Jin saw the confusion in his eyes and explained, Yaoji is my good friend. Her name is Lu Heng and she is also Lanting's cousin. Han Yu said bluntly, since I have nothing to do, I might as well go there. Feng Jin shook his head with a bitter smile at Han Yu's attitude. With Wenbin's temperament, if he encountered any setbacks in the future, he would suffer a lot. Jiang Pingji didn't come back until an hour before the city gate was locked. She rode a tall horse and slowly returned to the Lu's house. As soon as she came back, she heard from the gatekeeper that Feng Jin had come to see her. Huayu? Jiang Pingji asked, did he leave any other message? The gatekeeper thought for a moment and shook his head. Langjun only asked me to tell you that he had been here. He didn't say anything else. Oh, I see. Jiang Pingji felt relieved. It seemed that it was a normal visit and he didn't encounter any difficulties. But the gatekeeper hesitated. What? The gatekeeper stammered, the one who often goes with Feng Langjun has come to see you again. Jiang Pingji tried not to think too much. What did he mean by, always goes with Feng Jin? It felt like there was an affair going on between them. Did you say that Wuma Jun came again today? Since the last time at Yingchun House, the frequency of Wuma Jun's visits was frighteningly high. But Jiang Pingji often went out so she didn't run into him. The gatekeeper said awkwardly, yes, I heard from other servants. He seems to want to marry the second Yangzi. What? Marry the second Yangzi of the Lu's house? Jiang Pingji was stunned for a while. Then she remembered that there was a sister who had never shown her face in the Lu's house. However, her stepsister was not even 9 years old this year, right? Didn't Wuma Jun want to marry Jingxian? Why did he change his target to his sister of a concubine? Or could it be that this person wanted both of them? Jiang Pingji's eyes turned cold. She pursed her lips and looked extremely unhappy. After returning to the house, she went straight to see Lu Shi. He was reading some documents seriously. Lanting, you're here. Lu Shi put the book aside and smiled. Sit next to me. Jiang Pingji asked directly, Father, what do you mean? If Lu Shi had not hinted or misled Wuma Jun, he wouldn't have known that there was a daughter of a mistress in the Lu's house. For some reason, although the siblings were in the house, they were scarily invisible in the eyes of others. It was obvious that someone had done it on purpose. Lu Shi asked, What? There is a rumor in the world that Wuma Jun wants to marry my sister. Lu Shi said, It's not a rumor. I did agree to it. Jiang Pingji. Lanting, I swore in front of your mother's grave, Lu Shi said. I won't let those who hurt her and this family live a good life. But my sister, Lu Shi said meaningfully, I only have your mother in my life. Jiang Pingji suddenly understood. The children in the house were not Lu Shi's biological children? If that was the case, she couldn't help but look at Lu Shi's head. Chapter 200. Father, you mean? My sister. Jiang Pingji withdrew her gaze. She did not want to be too obvious and hurt his dignity as a man. It's just a grudge between the previous generation. I'll tell you in detail when everything is settled. Lu Shi caressed her hair and said gently, You don't have to listen to the intrigues in the backyard. You don't want to dirty your ears and change your temperament. Did you agree to marry my sister to Wuma Jun to avenge my mother? Jiang Pingji asked. At the same time she was deep in thought. If that was the case, there must be something special about this stepsister's identity. Yes, it's a very important part. Lu Shi's lips curled into a sinister smile. It was as if there was a cold lake deep in his eyes. I wanted to wait a few more years, but Wuma Jun came to me on his own. He must have some ulterior motive. I'd like to see his expression when he finds out the truth. It'll be interesting. She killed Amin for her own ambition. She should pay the price. She asked, Who killed my mother? Lu Shi did not answer her. He sighed and said, I told you. It's a grudge between the previous generation. I don't want you to be involved. I know where your ambition lies. The world is vast and that is your goal. I, your father, will settle the score for your mother. But, Jiang Pingji felt that things were not that simple. Lu Shi was hiding an important truth. If you want to do something for your mother, then promise me. As Lu Shi spoke, he leaned forward and whispered in her ear word by word. It was as if he was making a solemn vow. Don't let anyone get their hands on the throne of the world. You can only win. You can't lose. Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. Even though Lu Shi had learned some things from Master Liaochen, it was the first time he told her that she had to win. She asked in a low voice, Will the person who killed my mother fight with me? Lu Shi couldn't give a very clear answer to this question because he didn't know the details. The only thing he could say was, I don't know, but if you want to be the ruler of the world, it won't be wrong. Who cares if she will fight with you? She won't be able to beat you. Just remember today's conversation in your heart. Even if you are talking in your sleep at night, you must not leak even half a word. You must not leak anything. Even though Jiang Pingji didn't mind Lu Shi's serious advice, she had to take it seriously. What's more? Lu Shi smiled sarcastically. How could someone who only knows how to suck up to you compete with you? What could she rely on? Tossing and turning men's bodies, seductively asking for sex. It's the biggest joke in the world. A woman? Jiang Pingji was surprised. She thought Lu Shi wanted to deal with a man. Lu Shi obviously didn't want to talk about this topic anymore. His daughter was too cunning. The more he talked, the more information he would leak. Before the situation became clear, he didn't want to dig up the past. Lu Shi wouldn't be worried if she was getting stronger. But now it was clear that it was still not in its infancy. It still needed to recuperate and accumulate its foundation. Lu Shi was in no hurry. He had waited for so many years and he didn't mind waiting longer. As long as he could see that woman's head fall to the ground before he died, everything would be worth it. Your sister's matter is settled then. Lu Shi's voice was calm, but there was a hint of chilling pleasure in it. Jiang Pingji was not a compassionate person. Lu Shi had already hinted that his sister had a special identity. If she continued to speak up for her, it would seem a little stupid. But didn't father say that Wuma Jun and Jingxian? Could it be that he wants to enjoy the bliss of having two wives? Lu Shi said, Let him worry about it. In any case, Wuma Jun would not let his stepsister become his concubine. It was even more impossible for the daughter of the Wei family's first wife to become his concubine. Naturally, Wuma Jun had to cancel the marriage. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to leave Hejian County alive. On one hand, he promised Lu Shi to marry his daughter, but on the other, he wanted to take Wei Jingxian's engagement. Wasn't he courting death? But, Father, Jingxian and I have broken off our engagement. The Wei family is interested in marrying Wuma Jun. Although they didn't say it officially, some well-informed people know about it. Now that Wuma Jun has changed his mind, doesn't the Wei residents have any objections? Lu Shi was a little surprised. He did not expect his daughter, who had been so insensitive before, to think about this. Don't worry. It's just gossip. The Wei residents did not admit it. They just need to say that others guessed wrongly. Lu Shi smiled and said, "Have you forgotten that there was another person at the gathering other than Wuma Jun, who was of equal status and had a brighter future?" "You mean Feng Jin?" Jiang Pingji thought of her good friend. Feng Jin is the second son of the Feng family. His father is the head of the Imperial Secretariat, Feng Ren. He comes from a noble family. Isn't he better than a prince who is not favored and feared by the government? It is said that the daughter of the Wei family should be married to someone of high status. The daughter of the Wei family is barely a match for him. Jiang Pingji did not expect such a plot twist. Will it work? It's in the bag, Lu Shi said calmly. Marriage is about matching two surnames. If it is fated, it will happen naturally. Jiang Pingji was speechless. But you are on good terms with Feng Jin. If he really marries the daughter of the Wei family, it may affect the relationship between you two. No matter how they broke off the engagement, Wei Jingxian would always be labeled as Lu Shi's ex-fiancé. Feng Jin knew that their relationship was pure, but a man's mentality would always be a little stiff. Especially when Feng Jin and Lu Shi had more contact in the future. They would visit each other and Lu Shi would see the married Wei Jingxian. He was afraid that Feng Jin would think too much. Jiang Pingji only wanted to touch her forehead and say, "How overthinking." This was not the era where everyone was gay. Seeing two people of the same sex getting along well, one could speculate that they were in an impure relationship. Lu Shi did not know that Feng Jin had long known that Jiang Pingji was a girl. Anyone who married Wei Jingxian would feel disgusted, but Feng Jin would not. Jiang Pingji said with certainty, "That won't happen. Huayu is not an ordinary man." She was not worried that Feng Jin would feel disgusted, but she was worried that Wei Jingxian would. If the two of them were fated to be husband and wife, she would have to keep a distance from Feng Jin. She could not cause a family conflict, could she? But for now she did not have to worry too much. Nothing was set in stone yet. Lu Shi praised, "Feng Huayu is indeed not simple." It was a pity that the son of the Feng family was destined to not be on the same path as his daughter. Chapter 201. Lu Heng and Feng Jin were friends. In the past, when they met, they would talk about everything under the sun, or exchange opinions on politics. Now they had another topic to discuss. Lu Heng's cousin Feng Jin's good friend Lu Lanting. The former had a secret brother complex, while the latter admired Jiang Pingji and treated her as a best friend. They had a lot to talk about. At first, Han Yu was just listening to them out of boredom. But after a while, he became more interested in the Lanting they were talking about. When Lu Heng heard Feng Jin say that Han Yu was Master Yuanjing's disciple, he couldn't help but be in awe. He looked at Han Yu with even more enthusiasm. His cousin was going to Langyi to study. If he could find out Master Yuanjing's preferences earlier, it might come in handy. With this in mind, Lu Heng tried to get more information from Feng Jin. Han Yu's lips curled into a smile, and he gave Feng Jin a meaningful look. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. He guessed that this was probably what Lanting meant by brother Khan. Lu Heng had good intentions. He would just pretend that he didn't see it. I can understand that Yaoji loves her brother. It's just that teacher has already taken in his full number of disciples. I'm afraid he won't be taking in any more. Han Yu shook his head regretfully and said, "But Langyi Academy still welcomes you. If you go to Langyi in the future, you can be my classmate." This time, Feng Jin, who was watching from the side, was surprised. Already full? Master Yuanjing has found the fourth person he has been looking for? This time it was Lu Heng's turn to be confused. Why couldn't he understand what these two were saying? Feng Jin could not help but sigh when he saw that she was still puzzled. "Yaoji, there's something you don't know. When Master Yuanjing took back the 3 cities and returned to Langyi County, he performed a divination for himself. He was destined to have 4 disciples. A few years ago, I heard that you had already accepted 3 disciples. I thought that with Lanting's talent he would be the 4th disciple that you're looking for. I didn't expect that you already have one. In terms of students, all the students in Langi Academy could be considered as Yuanjing's students. However, there could only be 4 real disciples. Lu Heng's face was filled with disappointment. Although he belittled his cousin, he was still very proud of him. How could a student and a personal disciple be the same? For the former, Master Yuanjing only came out to give lectures occasionally, but for the latter, he taught everything he knew. AI. Lu Heng sighed and then said somewhat open-mindedly, "If I get it, it's my fortune. If I don't, it's my fate." However, I heard from Huayu that Master Yuanjing was painstakingly looking for his 4th disciple. This is really puzzling. He emphasized the word diligently. With Master Yuanjing's fame and talent, which scholar in the world would not go after him? Too many students had racked their brains just to meet Master Yuanjing. If they could be accepted as his disciple, it would be a blessing to their ancestors. Would Master Yuanjing still need to search for him? Simply absurd. However, he was not so sure after observing Feng Jin and Han Yu's expressions. Han Yu said, "I had recommended Huayu to Master, but Master said that Huayu had another destiny in life and he was not fated to be with him." Master Yuanjing had a quirk when it came to accepting disciples. Not only did he want the disciple to be smart and have a temperament that suited his taste, but he was also particular about mysterious fate. Just as Lu Heng thought, after Master Yuanjing became famous, there were countless people who wanted to be his direct disciple. He could choose any outstanding talent in the world. What kind of student couldn't he find? Han Yu also wanted to give it a try, but he did not expect that Master Yuanjing would take the initiative to accept a disciple. After entering the sect, he had seen too many people who were praised by Master Yuanjing, but all of them failed at the last stage. They had another destiny and were not fated to be Master Yuanjing's disciple. To hell with the fate of master and disciple. If you don't accept disciples, how can there be the fate of master and disciple? Master Yuanjing only smiled and did not say anything about this resentment. He never explained anything. The first 3 disciples were accepted smoothly, but the last one had been hanging around for many years. He thought he could not find him anymore. Feng Jin was curious. Although Master Yuanjing's criteria for accepting a disciple were a little strange, and the last one was even more inexplicable, he could tell how much he valued this matter. The first 3 disciples were accepted quickly, but the last one was not easy to accept. Feng Jin was indeed curious. "I don't know who the 4th disciple is. I remember that Wenbin wrote to me last time that Master Yuanjing was quite troubled about accepting disciples. Now that we met, he told me that the candidate has already been selected. I can't help but be curious." Speaking of the 4th disciple, Han Yu was also confused. He had not understood his master's intention. "I have told Huayu about this person before. There are many young talents in Langi Academy, and Master Yuanjing's disciples are among the best. There is only one person who is an exception." Han Yu frowned slightly. "When I first arrived at Langi County, I thought that person should be Master Yuanjing's disciple. Later I found out that he was not. Not only was he not even a student of Langi Academy, but Master Yuanjing specially allowed him to study here." Feng Jin thought for a while and suddenly remembered, "The person you are talking about is the one with an unknown birth date and a very bad fate." Lu Heng was confused. "What unknown birth date and a very bad fate?" Han Yu nodded and said, "That's him." Feng Jin was surprised. "That person has been studying in Langi Academy for 7 or 8 years. If Master Yuanjing had accepted him earlier, he would have been his first disciple. Why didn't he accept him for 7 or 8 years and only accepted him when it was almost time?" Han Yu also asked his master about this question, and his master smiled meaningfully. "Timing." Han Yu said, "Master Yuanjing said that the timing was not right before, but now it is time." Feng Jin was speechless. Many famous teachers had quirks, and Master Yuanjing was definitely one of them. Lu Heng had to interrupt and asked, "After listening to you for so long, I still don't know who the lucky person is." Wuxia. After Master Yuanjing accepted him as a disciple, he named him Zixiao, Han Yu answered. Wuxia. Wei Zixiao. He had never heard of him. Lu Heng searched for relevant memories, but there was no trace of this person. "Then why did you say that his birth date is unknown and a very bad fate?" Lu Heng had a bad habit. If he didn't understand, he would want to ask. If he didn't ask clearly, his heart would itch uncomfortably. Han Yu's expression froze. It seemed that he was having a hard time talking about it. Lu Heng thought that Han Yu had encountered a problem. His heart skipped a beat and he quickly said, "I am presumptuous. Please forgive me, Wenbin." Han Yu shook his head and said softly, "There is no taboo. I am just afraid that others will have unnecessary fear and scruples towards Zixiao if I say it. The people of the world are ignorant and fear ghosts and gods. Just a small date of birth can create so many tricks. It is really a pity for Zixiao. If it weren't for Wei Xi's good luck, he might have been strangled to death by his family and thrown into the wilderness when he was born." Lu Heng heard this and didn't continue to ask. If he had asked, Han Yu might have told him, but it was not a gentleman's behavior to join in the fun. Chapter 202. Although he didn't see Lu Lanting, who was praised by Feng Jin, Lu Heng had left a good impression on Han Yu. "Hey, Fourth Langjun is back?" Feng Jin and Han Yu came back together. They opened the curtain and saw a carriage parked in front of them. It was the carriage that Wuma Jun had taken during the day. What a coincidence. Wenbin and I got off at the same time. Obviously Wuma Jun had also noticed it. He was unhappy to see Feng Jin stepping on the stool and another person in the carriage. Wuma Jun didn't like Feng Jin's family background. Feng Jin wasn't a member of the royal family. What right did he have to live a better life than him? What right did he have to be more talented and outstanding than him? Although he was polite to Feng Jin on the surface, he didn't respect him that much. However, when Han Yu stepped on the stool and came out of the carriage, Wuma Jun's unhappiness disappeared instantly. He put on a faint smile as if his previous carelessness and disgust didn't exist. Unfortunately, neither Feng Jin nor Han Yu were easy to deal with. To put it bluntly, among the three of them except for Wuma Jun, whose acting skills were a bit bad, the other two were going to be best actors in the future. Before Wuma Jun could say anything, Feng Jin introduced Han Yu after greeting him. "This is my good friend. His surname is Han, and his name is Yu. He is Master Yuanjing's disciple." Feng Jin emphasized the words Master Yuanjing's disciple, hinting that Wuma Jun shouldn't be so embarrassed that he couldn't move when he saw a beauty. Fortunately, Wuma Jun wasn't hopeless. He immediately withdrew his eager eyes and adopted a reserved plan. Taking a step back in order to advance, he could first establish a good relationship with them. Yes, in this era of masculinity, men might not be completely safe. Han Yu saw the eagerness in Wuma Jun's eyes. He felt a chill in his heart. The hair on his arms stood up and he got goosebumps. He suddenly regretted agreeing to Feng Jin's request. Wuma Jun obviously didn't care about men and women. He didn't want to get himself involved. Thinking of this, Han Yu came up with a plan in his mind. He slowly revealed a sneer. However, in Wuma Jun's eyes, it was a stunning beauty, who was satisfied with him. He had to admit that it was a big misunderstanding. It made Han Yu feel nauseous. Wuma Jun didn't like Feng Jin, but he didn't like Feng Jin being out of his control either, so he asked about his schedule. Feng Jin smiled faintly. He dealt with it flawlessly and Wuma Jun could not find any mistakes. "Fourth Langjun, have you made any progress in visiting the Lu residence today?" How could Feng Jin not see that the other party was trying his best to hide it? If it wasn't for the fact that he still had some brains, he would have already flown into the sky. He must have encountered something good. Wuma Jun had already determined that Feng Jin had the intention of relying on him, so he did not hide anything from him. He revealed that Lu Shi had already relented and intended to betroth his daughter to him. Although she was only a concubine's daughter, she had a good father, money and food. At the thought of Hu County, Wuma Jun's heart began to beat faster. It was as if he could already see Lu Shi helping him ascend the throne. When Feng Jin heard that, he almost dropped the cup in his hand and spilled some tea. Wuma Jun and Han Yu were quite surprised. It was normal for others to lose their composure, but how could Feng Jin lose his composure? Unbelievable. Han Yu smiled and closed his eyes to hide the surging speculation in his eyes. Could it be that the Lu family's daughter and Feng Jin had some unspeakable feelings for each other? Otherwise, according to Feng Jin's self-restraint, it was impossible for him to lose his composure so obviously. Wuma Jun did not think of that and Feng Jin, the person involved, felt even more wronged. He just did not react for a moment and thought that Lu Shi had agreed to marry Lu Shi. Thinking about it, Jiang Pingji, who was such an unbearable person, married Wuma Jun like a daughter. He did not even dare to think about it. The scene was too beautiful. Feng Jin was shocked by his own speculation, and that was why he lost his composure. He quickly realized that the Lu family's daughter that Wuma Jun mentioned should be the concubine's daughter, who had almost no presence in the Lu residence. If so, I have to congratulate Fourth Langjun for getting his wish and bringing home the beauty. Feng Jin smiled frankly. There was no trace of hidden displeasure on his face, which made Han Yu, who was secretly observing him, confused again. However, I heard that the Lu family's daughter is not even 9 years old yet. When she is at the age of engagement, hee. I am afraid that 4th Lang Jun will have to wait for a long time. Wuma Jun also knew his daughter's age, but did it matter? Not to mention that she was only 9 years old. Even if she was 9 months old, he would agree to the marriage. He did not have the capital to win over Lu Shi. That old fox was too cunning. He had tried to fool him for a few days, but he had been fooled by him. If he became Lu Shi's son-in-law, they would be in a natural alliance. Even if Lu Shi did not support him, he would not support anyone else. Moreover, she was Lu Shi's only daughter, so there was no reason for Lu Shi to not care about her. Ordinary princes did not have to lower themselves like Wuma Jun did. However, who asked him to be in an awkward position? If he did not find a way to fight for it, he would not be able to make a comeback for the rest of his life. It doesn't matter. I will just marry her and respect her. Yes, it didn't matter to Wuma Jun. He wanted to marry the daughter of Lu Shi, not that person. If he married her, he would worship her as a shrine. He could not stop him from being a playboy, not to mention that she was not married yet. Seeing his attitude, Feng Jin sneered in his heart. He thought that Jiang Pingji had seen through Wuma Jun's nature. Who would feel at ease if their daughter married to him? He had just reached an agreement with Lu Shi to be his son-in-law, and now he was coveting Wenbin's beauty. What a scumbag. Wuma Jun wanted to talk to Han Yu through the night, but Han Yu's IQ and literature were much higher than his. There was nothing to talk about. I am surprised. Wuma Jun is so lustful. Why have I not seen him do anything to you after so many days of following him? Han Yu had nothing to talk about with Wuma Jun, but he had endless things to talk about with his good friend, Feng Jin, so they decided to share a room. Feng Jin said helplessly, "My beauty is like a jade pearl on a plate. How can I compete with Wenbin's beauty?" Han Yu was speechless. It was not the Feng Jin he knew who would say such sarcastic words. Who taught him to praise others in the open but to insult others in the dark. Jiang Pingji thought that Feng Jin was being sarcastic. Was it her fault? Han Yu did not want to show any weakness. He teased. Wuma Jun mentioned that he was going to be engaged to the daughter of the Lu family. Why did you lose your composure? Chapter 203. Seeing that Feng Jin wanted to deny it, Han Yu pursed his lips and smiled. Don't play dumb, Huayu. How can you deny it? Feng Jin knew his friend's temperament. He knew that if he didn't give an explanation today, Han Yu wouldn't let him sleep all night. Feng Jin thought of a perfect excuse and explained calmly, "A few days ago, I met Chief Lu by chance and knew that he was a gentle and generous elder. Do you think Chief Lu couldn't see through Wuma Jun's treacherous thoughts? If he had seen through it, why did he agree to marry his daughter to Wuma Jun? To put it bluntly, isn't it like pushing his own blood relatives into the fire pit?" Yes, both he and Feng Jin could see through Wuma Jun's disguise. There was no reason that someone like Chief Lu couldn't see through it. Moreover, Huayu had said that Chief Lu was a gentle and family-oriented person in private. How could he not care about his only daughter's marriage? So, that's why you lost your composure? Han Yu squinted his eyes. It seemed that he still had doubts about Feng Jin's words. Feng Jin said seriously, "Otherwise? The daughter of the Lu family is not even 9 years old, and I will be married in 2 years. What kind of relationship could there be? Besides, the daughter of the Lu family has been raised in the boudoir since she was a child. She rarely goes out. Even her brother, Lanting, rarely sees her. How could I, a man outside, have any relationship with her? It's okay that you are a playboy, but how could you slander the innocence of a noble girl?" Han Yu lost interest and sat on the side of the bed sulkily. He changed the topic and asked, "If so, according to what Huayu said, why did Chief Lu do this?" Feng Jin couldn't figure it out either, but he was secretly relieved. Han Yu was not easy to deal with. He would be finished if he gave himself away. Feng Jin shook his head in confusion. "Well, I don't understand either. I think Chief Lu has other considerations. How could a man with a generous and family-oriented temperament, as well as extremely sharp judgment and experience, not see through Wuma Jun's clumsy disguise? It didn't make sense at all. Unless there was a compelling reason that made Chief Lu act in this way." Han Yu's face was filled with the word interested, but Feng Jin was not curious at all. Whether Lu Shi married his daughter or not was his family's business. Why should two unrelated men get involved? As usual, Feng Jin read a book in front of the lamp for a while. When he felt a little sleepy, he decided to go to bed. As soon as he lay down, Han Yu said, "I hope it won't involve politics. County Chief Lu's methods are a little creepy. Feng Jin was secretly amused. County Chief Lu is such a character. If it's not for the sake of the imperial court, could it be for a personal grudge? What kind of logic was it to marry the son he had raised for a few years to Wuma Jun just because of a personal grudge? Han Yu couldn't figure out Lu Shi's intentions. Forget it. My head hurts if I think too much. The two of them talked about their daily lives and learned about the things that had happened to each other over the years. They couldn't help but sigh. All of a sudden, Han Yu remembered Master Yuanjing's worries. Mister has been rather worried recently. The aristocratic families have already flourished to such an extent. If we don't restrain ourselves, I'm afraid something bad will happen. Both of them were still awake and were chatting to pass the time. Feng Jin sneered, rein in at the precipice? How could they do that? It wasn't that no one had realized this problem. The point was that the aristocratic families were like a carriage that was slipping down the slope and they couldn't control it anymore. If the future ruler of the world is also a member of the aristocratic families, maybe we can continue our glory. But what if he isn't? Even if he is a member of the aristocratic families, who can tolerate the royal family being controlled by the aristocratic families? Or even lower than them? The aristocratic families have crossed the line. Han Yu was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Feng Jin to have such a bold idea. However, Han Yu couldn't refute Feng Jin's words. Nowadays, the royal family of Dongqing was the Wuma family, but the real helmsman was the four aristocratic families. Which of the important positions in each province and county wasn't from the aristocratic families? How many children of poor families were there? Dongqing had always emphasized culture and restrained martial arts. Their military was weak and almost all of them were lost in the battlefield in the north borderline. If the aristocratic families didn't agree, the emperor's order couldn't even be passed out of the Shangyang palace. Wasn't the royal family afraid of those aristocratic families? Afraid? Of course they were afraid. Who would feel comfortable if they had the world but couldn't enjoy the supreme power? However, the royal family of Dongqing had gradually fallen into a disadvantageous position in the open and secret battle with the aristocratic families. They couldn't be majestic at all. Fortunately, the interests of the aristocratic families weren't united. Each had their own conflicts. The royal family of Dongqing was also in a strange balance. They were muddle-headed in front of the royal family and kept thinking about taking back the power. They kept playing dirty tricks. As the legitimate son of the Feng family, it was not easy for Feng Jin to see the drawbacks so clearly. I didn't think about it before, but after I came to Hejian and met County Chief Lu, I was suddenly enlightened. It was as if the fog in front of him was blown away by the wind, and he saw the truth. The chaos in Hu County was caused by natural disasters and sabotage, but the sabotage was greater than the natural disasters. Why did County Chief Lu persevere and even manage Hu County to its current state when others were troublesome and even lost their lives? While others were fawning over Lu Shi, few were willing to delve into the meaning of the problem. Was it because they didn't want to? Or was it because they didn't dare to? Lu Shi didn't exterminate the gentry in Hu County, and their lives weren't as easy as they used to be. They lived in fear and didn't dare to go overboard under Lu Shi's watch. But would that be enough to prevent future troubles? Not necessarily. County Chief Lu has been promoted to the General Evaluation Officer. I think there will be other changes. For example, he will be promoted to the governor on the surface, but in fact, it will be to take Hu County from him. Do you know how many people are drooling over Hu County? If Lu Shi is no longer the county chief, or if he passes away and Hu County has a new governor, what do you think will happen to Hu County? Han Yu's mouth was dry. He didn't have to think to know the answer. Hu County was like a lamb that Lu Shi had carefully raised. It slowly grew up, became fat, and the wool on its body was thicker. Around it, there were countless greedy eyes staring at it. Once Lu Shi, the shepherd, was distracted or simply not around, the fat lamb would be plucked by the greedy demonic eye. Those who had a bit of foresight would probably keep the lamb and pluck it when it grew some hair. If the greedy people who couldn't wait for the wool to grow, they would probably kill the fat lamb. Han Yu said, in the end, County Chief Lu still cared about his identity as an aristocratic family, so he didn't kill all the aristocratic families to avoid future troubles. Their reason told them that it was best to kill all the aristocratic families, but they were all from aristocratic families. If the same problem was put in front of them, they would probably make the same decision as Lu Shi or even a little softer. Han Yu frowned slightly. It seemed that he didn't like this heavy topic. What made him even more unhappy was that he knew he couldn't avoid this conflict in the future. Unless he was willing to give up all his knowledge and live in seclusion, no matter what happened outside. But was it possible? Chapter 204. Perhaps it was because he had something on his mind, he didn't fall asleep until the middle of the night. Then he woke up on time according to his biological clock. The next day, seeing Wuma Jun, Feng Jin said, "I'm afraid I can't stay in Hejian for more than 2 days." Wuma Jun was stunned. He didn't know how Feng Jin knew what he was thinking. Wasn't it simple? Wuma Jun stayed in Hejian to win the support of the aristocratic families. Now that he had the support of Lu Shi, the other aristocratic families didn't need to be so anxious. Instead of staying in Hejian County, it was better to visit the Wang family in Langyi. Fourth Langjun, I hope you can make an exception and let me say goodbye to my friend Lanting and tell her that we will meet in Langyi in the future. Wuma Jun was happy to see that happen. He already regarded Lu Shi as his father-in-law, so Jiang Pingji was naturally his brother-in-law. Feng Jin was his right-hand man, so it was beneficial for Wuma Jun to build a good relationship with his future brother-in-law. Feng Jin and Han Yu saw all the changes in his emotions. Both of them felt disdain and contempt at the same time. They were not afraid of being stupid, but they were afraid of being stupid and blind. Wuma Jun had already regarded Feng Jin as an aide and a subordinate that he could order around. That was ridiculous. What did Wuma Jun do to deserve Feng Jin's loyalty? However, they didn't say anything. They just went out together. One wanted to say goodbye to his new friend, and the other wanted to see what the legendary Lu Lanting looked like. They were lucky that Jiang Pingji didn't run around, but if they came a little later she would have gone out too. Han Yu got out of the carriage and was about to step on the stool when he saw a familiar figure standing next to Feng Jin. They were talking happily. Han Yu was speechless. His eyes fell on Jiang Pingji's feet, which were wearing socks and wooden clogs. The scene from the day before flashed in his mind. Jiang Pingji had already noticed him when Han Yu was looking at her. It wasn't that she had sharp eyes and ears, but the enthusiasm in the streaming room had almost blown the roof off. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, I watched the streaming video on Baidu yesterday. I thought it was a pity, but I didn't expect to see him in person. I was so excited that I wanted to shake his hand. Must be very smooth. Jiang Pingji sneered in her heart when she saw the bullet screen. Even though she was watching the live stream, there was still a screen between them. Dream on. Bayan Huakai, no. Host, give the handsome young man a close-up, magnified close-up. I want to take a screenshot and use it as a mural. He wasn't even dead yet and they were already planning to hang him on the wall. Jiang Pingji ridiculed every bullet on the screen. She secretly glanced at Han Yu and found that he was also looking at her feet. Fei Shuang Dianmo. I'm a newbie in the live broadcast room. I heard that the streamer can see through a person's underwear at first sight. Then, do you know the size of this handsome young man? What is your 3 measurements? I think his fingers are so beautiful. They would be perfect for playing the piano. Jiang Pingji almost laughed when she saw the bullet screen. If the other party hadn't reminded her, she would have forgotten about it. Host V. This young man is indeed very good looking, but if you think about the image of him taking off his pants to go to the toilet, or the image of him having constipation, I don't think he's so fairy-like. This kid has been suffering from excessive internal heat recently, and it's not good for his bowels. The audience in the live broadcast room. Jiang Pingji thought she could entertain herself by ruining other people's enjoyment of beauty. Host V. As for his size, I think the girl who has used him has the most right to speak. He's young but he's already experienced a lot. He has 2 concubines who warm his bed. He's not messy but he's not clean by the standards of your world. Jiang Pingji turned Han Yu's background upside down in the streaming room. Everyone looked at Han Yu and felt that he was a handsome, fairy-like young man. But when they saw the bullet screen that the streamer posted, they felt that it hurt their eyes. Streamer, why are you so cruel? Can't you just let them lick the handsome young man in peace? Xian, it hurts my eyes when I imagine the handsome young man squatting in the toilet with a conflicted face. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, hurts my eyes +1. The streamer is really a veteran in the field of teaching people tirelessly. Jiang Pingji could tease and tease the audience in the live broadcast room, but it was impossible for her to say what she said before. If she had a grudge against Han Yu, she wouldn't be merciful with her words. But now it seemed that Feng Jin's friend obviously knew Han Yu, so she couldn't tease him rudely. Feng Jin noticed the weird atmosphere between Jiang Pingji and Han Yu, and a guess came to his mind. Could it be that the 2 of you have already met? Jiang Pingji laughed in her heart. Yes, more than just met. Han Yu also laughed secretly. What a small world. Before I entered the city yesterday, I met Lu Langjun and had a brief conversation with him. Feng Jin was overjoyed and said, I guess it's fate. Jiang Pingji laughed. Doomed fate. However, it was just the beginning. There were surprises everywhere in life. For example, when Feng Jin introduced Han Yu's courtesy name to her, Jiang Pingji was strangely silent. She stared at Han Yu as if she wanted to see through the layers of clothes and see through him. Han Yu subconsciously took a step back and said reluctantly, "Lu Langjun, is there something wrong with my appearance?" "No, it's very neat." Jiang Pingji added, "Wenbin, do you know a man named Cheng Yumo?" Jiang Pingji had never thought that the man her father recommended to marry into her family would appear in front of her. It was fate. Han Yu was confused and asked, "Lu Langjun, have you heard of Yumo?" Jiang Pingji didn't answer but asked back, "So, Wei Zixiao does exist?" Han Yu then realized that there was something wrong with Jiang Pingji's words. "Lu Langjun has never heard of them, so how do you know about them?" "I once dreamed that there was a fairy in the Jasper Lake. There was a fairy beauty taking a bath and burning incense. I wanted to go closer to ask her, but I heard someone call her Zixiao." The beauty answered and called him Yumo. Hearing the voice, I knew that the fairy was a man. Jiang Pingji described it vividly as if she had really had the dream. Both Feng Jin and Han Yu were stunned. However, the audience in the streaming room couldn't buy it. After all, they already knew how bad Jiang Pingji was. They would never be fooled. Lao Siji Lianming, I feel sorry for the confused young Feng Jin and Han Yu. They have been tricked by the streamer. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, sorry +1. Who would call their partners by their full names. The loophole in Jiang Pingji's story was that she accurately called out Cheng Yumo and Wei Zixiao's surnames. If they really knew their names from a dream, they couldn't call each other by their full names, could they? So, it was possible to know their first names but not their surnames. Chapter 205. If that's the case, you also saw me in your dreams? Han Yu asked with a faint smile. He looked friendly, but there was a hint of judgment in his eyes. Who would believe such nonsense? Yes, another loophole in Jiang Pingji's story was that there was another person in it, Han Yu. If you paid attention, you would notice that she asked Cheng Yumo and Wei Zixiao in surprise after hearing Han Yu's courtesy name. If the story was not contradictory, then Han Yu should have appeared in her dream. Otherwise she must have made it up. Jiang Pingji thought that Han Yu would be ashamed, but he nodded. Yes. It's a pity that the dream was hazy. I could only see the silhouette but not the face. I thought it was just a dream, but I didn't expect it to be real. The viewers in the streaming room were amazed by Jiang Pingji's acting skills. Jinchuan Kin Liang, I only admire the streamer's acting skills. She did it all in one take. It was such nonsense, but even she herself believed it. Life is like a drama. Even the streamer can win an Oscar if she depends on her acting skills. Chiofeng Cc, Oscar is nothing. No matter how good the best actor and best actress are, can they be 100% in character all day? Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, well, I know the streamer is lying, but she said it so confidently that I am beginning to doubt her. Even the viewers in the streaming room began to doubt their own judgment, let alone Han Yu, who didn't know much about her. Han Yu's mouth twitched. He said in a stiff tone, "So, it is fate that I met Lanting." Jiang Pingji readily accepted his advice and said, "Yes, such a fate, it will be a good story to tell." Feng Jin believed her and said with surprise, "People say that what you think about in the day is what you dream about at night." But Lanting was born and grew up in Hejin County. She had never heard of the names of Wenbin and the other two. Wei Zixiao's courtesy name was only recently given. Lanting could actually dream of such a scene. Maybe it was a sign of fate? If I go to Langyi in the future, I might be able to meet my dream friend. Han Yu was still doubtful, but he was more convinced after hearing what Feng Jin said. Although this speech was a little dreamy and romantic, it couldn't ignore the bigger picture. Let's rewind and take a look at what Jiang Pingji said. She saw a fairy beauty bathing and burning incense in the Jasper Lake. She wanted to go closer to ask, but she heard someone call her Zixiao. The beauty responded and called him friend Emo. In other words, the background was the bathtub. She was taking a bath. Han Yu couldn't imagine it. Zixiao was taking a bath in his dream. What was he doing in his dream? Although Lu Shi was a young boy who had yet to grow up, and the scene in the dream was still hazy, she could only vaguely make out the silhouettes of people. She shouldn't be able to see anything out of place, but she still felt that it was a little strange. Jiang Pingji took advantage of the fact that her body was still young, so she asked Han Yu. That person called Yumo really has a good temper. He's cautious and thorough in his work. He's honest and upright. Han Yu was deep in thought and replied subconsciously, of course. Yumo has a good temperament, and he is cautious and reliable. Master speaks highly of him. When he finished, he came back to his senses. He was more and more convinced of what Jiang Pingji said in the dream. Why did he believe it? Qing Yumo was a nobody among all the students. He kept a low profile and his presence was almost non-existent. Except for a few close friends who knew about his talent and temperament, other strangers didn't know much about Qing Yumo, let alone Jiang Pingji, who was far away in Hejin County. But she could accurately point out Yumo's temperament and his biggest advantage. It was obvious that there was a basis for it. Now Han Yu was interested in Jiang Pingji's dream. He couldn't care less about the little knot in his heart. So, that way Zixiao. Jiang Pingji suddenly smiled and asked, "Is he really as beautiful as a beautiful woman?" Han Yu was trying to listen to what she had to say. But he almost choked on his own saliva. He was being rude in front of others. Feng Jin was also speechless. Jiang Pingji looked like she was seriously asking for advice, which made it impossible for him to be annoyed. Han Yu said, "Didn't you say that you didn't see his face?" Jiang Pingji put on an, "I'm very innocent" expression. "I didn't see his face, but I heard Wenbin tease him. He said that he accidentally left a sachet when he went out and it was found by a merchant. He took the sachet and asked the matchmaker to propose marriage. I think if he wasn't much more beautiful than a woman, he wouldn't have been mistaken for his gender." Jiang Pingji was the one who was lying through her teeth. But it had been a lie for so long that most of the viewers in the streaming room believed it. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, haha, I don't know how traumatized he was when he was mistaken for a woman. Kalwa De Yi, I've been watching the streaming for a few days. I realized that the men in this world are a bit effeminate. They have flowers in their hair and powdered their hair. They are gentle and beautiful. If they look more androgynous, they will be easily mistaken for a man. The traumatized area should be infinite, right? Han Yu's white cheeks were a bit flushed. He seemed to be a bit nervous. You can't answer this question. If you see him one day and spill the beans, you will be the one to suffer. He shook his head decisively and kept the question a secret. But, Han Yu said, but what you said about Zixiao being teased in the dream might happen. But Zixiao doesn't like others to pay too much attention to his appearance. He always says that the appearance is given to him by his parents. Children can't choose whether they are beautiful or ugly. Isn't the essence of a skeleton? In this era, it was dangerous for a woman to be good-looking, but it was not necessarily safe for a man to be good-looking. A skeleton? Jiang Pingji smiled. This guy is interesting. How could he not be interesting? In this era, one's appearance affected one's fate as an official, and one's appearance was also an important criterion for being an official. But that guy said that appearance was not that important. Otherwise he was just standing there and talking, pretending to be serious. Or he really thought so and he was quite aware of it. Han Yu knew that Jiang Pingji would leave for Langyi in a few months. He smiled and said, "If so, we will be classmates by then. But Lanting, you don't have to rush. You can go to Langyi in 3 or 4 months. What? It was Feng Jin who asked. Han Yu said helplessly, "Huayu, did you forget that in 3 months the students who passed the initial assessment will go to Shangjing for the final assessment? This year there are many students who passed the preliminary assessment. Master Yuanjing may personally escort them to Shangjing. I remember that Lu County Chief is this year's General Assessment Officer. He will also go to Shangjing." If Jiang Pingji went to Langyi according to the original schedule, half of the academy would be empty. The most important thing was that Master Yuanjing would not be there. She thought for a while and said, "If so, I will go to Shangjing with my father. After the assessment, I will follow Master Yuanjing to Langyi. It will be on the way." Chapter 206. Feng Jin was visiting with his friends, so Jiang Pingji invited them to a banquet. She didn't go out to have fun and the audience in the streaming room felt bored. They were used to the streamer's style of making trouble every day, but she suddenly became so elegant and serious. They were not used to it. It would be fine if there was good food. They could treat the streaming as a food show. They couldn't eat it through the screen, but they could enjoy watching it. However, the food on the table that the maids served was very ordinary. It didn't arouse their appetite. Keo Wangdu, the development of food in this era is so backward. Feels like nothing. I don't have an appetite. Xiangguazi, I thought I would see a dazzling dish like Little Master Boy, and I would have a flash of inspiration after eating it. It turns out that I was thinking too much. My Tao, we don't have to eat delicacies, but the streamer shouldn't make it so shabby, okay? Gai Chong Fan, it feels like a table of dishes in a small restaurant is better than the streamers. Jiang Pingji felt wronged. She couldn't control it. It was good enough to have something to eat. How could she be picky? She felt good now. She used to eat tasteless nutrient solution all day, but now she had a taste in her mouth. The audience in the streaming room kept complaining about the food. The dishes were monotonous and the seasonings were lacking. How could a normal person eat it? Obviously, Feng Jin and Han Yu, as normal people, felt that the Lus were very attentive in terms of food. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, the maids took the table away. Jiang Pingji looked at Feng Jin and said, "When does Wuma Jun plan to leave?" There was a flash of surprise in Han Yu's eyes. If he remembered correctly, Feng Jin hadn't told him why he was here. If that was the case, how did this person know that Feng Jin was planning to leave? Feng Jin had experienced the same thing many times, so he was used to it. It should be tomorrow if nothing goes wrong. Feng Jin knew too well about Wuma Jun's desire for quick success. Wuma Jun had already obtained Lu Shi's support, which was equivalent to having an inexhaustible supply of rice grains. In this era where food was more important than anything else, he would not panic if he had food in his hands. If he won the support of the Wang family of Langya and persuaded them to help him ascend the throne, the whole of Dongqing would be his. Jiang Pingji said sarcastically, "So urgent? It seems that Wuma Langjun is also an impatient person. He can't wait. For the sake of one's life and future, it's normal to be a little impatient." Feng Jin didn't forget how many unknown forces they had encountered on their way to Hejian County. Not only did he not forget, but Wuma Jun, whose life had been hanging by a thread, also did not forget. If he didn't fight for the throne, he would die. From a prince's point of view, Wuma Jun's thoughts were understandable. Unfortunately, this person's vision was so narrow. So what if he ascended the throne? Would the 3 tribes of the north borderline give up their covetous eyes on Dongqing? Wouldn't the other 4 countries covet Dongqing? More importantly, did Wuma Jun have the ability to restrain the increasingly powerful and lawless family tycoons? Probably not. If he had such foresight, he would not have gone to the Wang consortium. Once he ascended to the throne with the help of the Wang family, the aristocratic families would have complete control over the royal family. Wuma Jun would only be a puppet emperor. If Dongqing wanted to continue the throne, they could not allow the aristocratic families to develop and expand unscrupulously. Feng Jin could not say these words, and he was not in the position to say them. He could only bury them deep in his heart. Although they were going to be separated the next day, neither Feng Jin nor Jiang Pingji were pretentious. They were still talking and laughing. It was just a temporary separation, not an eternal one. Without separation, how could there be the joy of meeting an old friend in a foreign land? On the way back, Han Yu looked at Feng Jin thoughtfully and said, "Huayu is very unhappy." Feng Jin closed his eyes. The situation is getting worse and worse. I really don't know how many times such a situation will happen. Han Yu was puzzled. He did not know where Feng Jin's worry came from. If the world is in chaos, Huayu can show his talents. Judging from Lu Langjun, he is not an ordinary person. Maybe in the future, you can have a friendship with him. Of course, if the 2 of them were to assist their respective kings, then they could only do their own things. Feng Jin heard that and the corner of his mouth twitched. He felt that Han Yu and Jiang Pingji were on the same side. Both of them had restless temperaments and loved to stir up trouble at the drop of a hat. Although the royal family of Dongqing was declining, it was not destroyed yet. Now they were thinking about chaos. How could the royal family endure it? It could be seen that in the eyes of the aristocratic families, the royal family of Dongqing did not live up to its name. With a soft sigh, he dissipated into the air and disappeared. The next day, Jiang Pingji got up early and went to the Fengyu Pavilion outside the city to bid farewell to Feng Jin. The weather had started to warm up, but there was a cold wind blowing from time to time, making people's clothes rustle. Looking at Feng Jin's back, Jiang Pingji, who was originally emotionless, felt a little emotional. When will we meet again? She did not know whether they would be enemies or friends the next time they met. Jiang Pingji kept her emotions in check. She put a finger to her lips and whistled. White was already running towards her. "Let's go." She got on the horse and held the reins with both hands. The carriages in the distance had become a small dot, and Feng Jin was nowhere to be seen. White snorted and galloped toward the city gate. Ever since the attack on the Mengs, Jiang Pingji liked the feeling of galloping more and more. "Second Langjun, the people from the carpentry workshop are here. They are waiting for you in the mansion." As soon as they got back, the gatekeeper came forward to take the reins. Jiang Pingji's expression was cold and displeased at first, but when she heard that someone from the carpentry workshop was here, her eyes suddenly lit up. It was as if there were the brightest stars in them, which made people happy. Someone from the carpentry workshop? Where are they now? Take me there. Feng Jin was the first friend Jiang Pingji had made in this world, so he meant something to her. She did not show it on her face or say it, but she was still reluctant to leave Hejin County. However, compared to the big picture, these small sentiments were insignificant. The gatekeeper was also smiling and bowed. He's waiting for you in the mansion. Don't worry, Second Lang Jun. Jiang Pingji did not listen to the gatekeeper. She walked like the wind and the maids made way for her. To save time, she said, "You don't have to greet me. Go do your own things." She opened the door quickly but not rudely. A few craftsmen in linen clothes had been kneeling for a long time. No need for small talk. Just tell me, how is the crossbow I asked you to make? Jiang Pingji sat down without hesitation and skipped the complicated etiquette of the craftsmen. They looked at each other, and one of the craftsmen spoke on behalf of the craftsmen. It's a success. Chapter 207. Under normal circumstances, Jiang Pingji's streaming time was fixed. She would start streaming in the morning after waking up and washing up. She would stop streaming after dinner at night. If there were other special streaming tasks, she would adjust the streaming time according to the situation. It was the normal streaming time, and the streaming room was already filled with 10,000 viewers. Occasionally, someone would leave the room out of boredom, but another viewer would immediately fill in. Every trap in the streaming room depended on one's internet speed, hand speed, and luck. Chi Yun, compared to those innocent female protagonists in dramas, I like the streamer more. Especially when her eyes lit up just now. Really, it felt like she was electrified. That indescribable throbbing as if she was electrified, Pianxin Diao Wu, I think that feeling should be hot-blooded, right? When Jiang Pingji's eyes lit up, the viewers in the streaming room always felt that it should be accompanied by aggressive and passionate background music. In an instant, it could stir up people's blood and make their pores open wide. Quick, let me have a look. Jiang Pingji was born in an era where weapons of war were extremely advanced. She had even piloted and commanded aircraft carriers, let alone other portable weapons. It could be said that unless she was in a more advanced interstellar civilization, there was no weapon that could amaze her. Obviously, such a thing could not exist in this extremely backward and conservative society. Of course, she did not need it. In this ancient era, as long as she had a weapon that was more advanced than the average, she would have a higher chance of winning in terms of hardware. Why use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken? It was a bold attempt to get the craftsmen in the carpentry room to research the improved crossbow. Because of Jiang Pingji's order, the craftsmen put in a lot of effort to research it day and night. How could they dare to neglect it? Seeing that she was so excited, they secretly heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. After presenting the latest product, the craftsmen carefully watched Jiang Pingji take it, afraid that she would accidentally hurt herself. Jiang Pingji's smile disappeared, and she seriously fiddled with the slightly rough finished crossbow. The crossbow was bigger than she expected. The body of the bow was 3 feet and 3 inches long, and the bowstring was 2 feet and 5 inches long. The body of the bow was dyed dark brown, and one could smell the strong smell of paint when they got close to it. It was quite heavy in her hands, but it was not too heavy, and it was convenient to carry around. The craftsmen had to figure out the materials for the overall structure, and Jiang Pingji only provided them with data. To be able to produce a finished product in such a short period of time, regardless of the final results of the experiment, this attitude was worthy of praise. Next to the finished crossbow were a dozen or so arrows of different shapes and painted black. They were very different from ordinary arrows. Most of the arrowheads had blood grooves engraved on them, and some of them even had up to 10. If the arrowheads pierced into the target, it was easy to imagine that they would dig deep into the flesh near the wound. Even if they were pulled out, they would pull out a large piece of flesh, making it seem rather cruel. But she liked it very much. These were the special arrows that she had designed based on the overall data of the crossbow. They were specially designed for this kind of composite crossbow. Each of them had their own advantages and were suitable for different terrains and environments. The length of the crossbow could be adjusted, and different arrows could be used to achieve different shooting ranges. The sighting device could also be disassembled. Because the damage rate was high, a disassembled sighting device could reduce the damage. However, these changes also increased the difficulty of materials and attacks. When Jiang Pingji designed the improved crossbow, she referred to many historical documents and the weapons in service in the military. If everything met her data standards, the range and penetrative power would be extremely terrifying. There were also a few military enthusiasts in the streaming room. When they saw the blood grooves on the arrowheads, their scalps went numb. Major General Wanyin, oh my god, if this thing is shot into the flesh, it will take a lot of skin and bones to pull it out. Keo Wangdu, it hurts just looking at it. The streamer made such a cruel thing. It's too scary. Xiangguazi, the crossbow in the streamer's hand is different from the ones I've seen before. The craftsman watched Jiang Pingji fiddle around with the crossbow without any change in her expression. They could not help but feel anxious. Was she satisfied? Or was she not satisfied? While they were feeling anxious, Jiang Pingji put down the slightly large crossbow and asked, "Have you tried it?" The craftsmen shook their heads and lowered their heads. They were trembling with fear. "We were afraid that you would be too impatient, so we each took charge of a part of the crossbow. After a few experiments and searching for suitable materials, we did not let you down. After the initial model of the crossbow was completed, we rushed to send it over." That being said, the craftsmen were still very confident in the finished products they made. They tested countless materials and each took charge of a part of the crossbow. The materials they found all matched the data given by Jiang Pingji. "Each of you took charge of a part of the crossbow? That's smart. It's a very time-saving method." Yes, if they did not divide the work, they would not have been able to produce the semi-finished product so quickly. Yes, in Jiang Pingji's eyes, it was a semi-finished product. There were still many inadequacies, but they were not major problems. Because of that, she had a preliminary understanding and a good impression of the craftsman's wisdom in that era. Although the technology was extremely backward and the social atmosphere was conservative, it was undeniable that they were not stupid. They had the heart to explore. Jiang Pingji's design was very detailed. Every part of the crossbow was provided with reference data. Skilled craftsmen would be able to figure it out by experimenting. However, these craftsmen knew how to divide the work, which maximized efficiency and saved time. They were worth teaching. I'm flattered. If it wasn't for the detailed design, I wouldn't have been able to produce this thing even if I had 10 times the time. The craftsmen did not dare to take charge. Instead, they fawned over Jiang Pingji with fear. She smiled and said brightly, "Why are you so reserved? I'm not the kind of person who can't stand other people's glory. If it's your work, then it's your work. You don't have to be so careful. You did a good job this time, but there are still many flaws that need to be improved." The craftsman felt relieved and secretly wiped the sweat off his forehead. It seemed that they had passed the test. The carpentry workshop was not an outstanding business under the Lus. The craftsmen were eager to be put in an important position. They did not want to repeat the boring and unskilled work all day long. Even if they were craftsmen, there was a hierarchy among them. Everyone had their own goals. Ever since they received the task from their Langjun, they had been working hard. If they did a good job this time, they would not be valued in the future. With that in mind, they mustered up all their energy and worked overtime just to attract Jiang Pingji's attention. Now that they looked at it, they had accomplished half of their goal. "Leave this crossbow. I'll test it and see where it's lacking. Then you can fix it accordingly," Jiang Pingji said. The materials used for the crossbow, the craftsmanship, and the original design are all confidential. You can't tell anyone, including your family. Chapter 208. There were also crossbows in this era, and they had been developed several times. However, they had many drawbacks. The shooting range was short, the crossbow was heavy, and it was inconvenient to carry. It also had certain requirements on the environment, or else it would be hard to maintain. The overall production process and cost were also high. Due to various reasons, only a small number of people could afford to use these crossbows, and they were not widely used. Even if they were, Jiang Pingji would not like them. She played with the semi-finished crossbow in her hand. The crossbow arm, crossbow bow, bowstring, and crossbow mechanism barely matched the data given by her. After her improvement, the time needed to load the arrows was greatly reduced, which also improved the mobility and flexibility of the crossbow. I don't know the cost of the finished crossbow and the production time. If the cost is high and the production time is long, it is impossible to produce it on a large scale with the current manpower in the carpentry workshop. What's more, it is a secret that needs to be kept. I can't let more craftsmen participate in the production. Jiang Pingji pouted and frowned. She was not satisfied with the current situation. However, she did not have many people working for her now. Even if she equipped each of them with a modified crossbow, she should be able to afford it according to her family's wealth. To prevent the crossbow from attracting attention, Jiang Pingji wrapped it in a white cloth and left the Lu's house with a dozen arrows of different models. To the farm. The Lu's house was not suitable for testing the improved crossbow. It was not that she was afraid that the servants would leak the secret, nor was she worried that she would accidentally hurt others. It was just that the mansion did not have a spacious place suitable for testing. According to her calculation, the shooting range of the improved crossbow was a bit far. She did not ride a horse this time. She sat in the carriage and asked the groom to drive her there. With the help of Meng Hun, the training of the troops was officially on track, and the effect was much more significant than before. After she got off the carriage, she saw a group of shirtless troops carrying a 3-foot-long log on their shoulders running past her step by step. At the end of the line was the petite Nongqin. She was also dressed in brown. She was sweaty and her lips were pale. Nongqin had obviously seen her. Her eyes were slightly twinkling and she became more stubborn. Jiang Pingji curled her lips slightly. When she passed by, she heard her voice. "If you are tired, you can stop and rest for a while. After all, you are a weak woman." She emphasized the word weak. Hearing this, Nongqin opened her eyes wide. However, after a moment, she gritted her teeth and ran past her with her head down. Her footsteps were heavy and slow. The cloth on her shoulder was worn through by the log and her skin was bleeding. She looked very miserable. Seeing that, Jiang Pingji chuckled. "Adjust your breathing and keep up with them. I'll wait for you at the drill ground." Hearing her words, Nongqin took a deep breath. Her footsteps became firmer and she looked better than before. Meng Hun had been following them and did not allow anyone to slack off. When he saw Jiang Pingji, he quickly stepped forward and saluted. "Greetings, Lang Jun. You don't have to be so polite. I came here today because I have something to do. Tell them to go to the drill ground and wait after training." At that moment, Meng Hun noticed that Jiang Pingji was holding a strange object wrapped in white cloth. It was shaped like a bow. Before he could guess, Jiang Pingji asked, "How is Nongqin's training these 2 days?" Meng Hun said subconsciously, "Although she is a woman, she has amazing perseverance. I've taught some of the soldiers in the troop a lesson. But Nongqin seems to have something on her mind. She doesn't communicate with others. She still practices hard after training." If it was a man who was so eager to learn, Meng Hun would only feel gratified and praise him as a hero. But Nongqin was a woman, and her determination to learn was stronger than that of a man. He could not help but admire her. After she came, someone must have said something bad in private. Jiang Pingji sneered and said calmly, "Nothing more than some derogatory words. Nongqin has been through a lot and her character has been shaped. It's a good thing that she practices hard. At least she doesn't cry." In Jiang Pingji's view, crying was a cowardly behavior second only to suicide. It was not worth advocating. Could crying solve anything? No, this would only encourage the perpetrator's arrogance and make him suffer even more. Nongqin was ridiculed and humiliated by others. She chose to immerse herself in practicing hard in order to get back at them instead of crying. This was a great improvement. Meng Hun looked a little embarrassed. The people of Dongqing were open-minded, but in many people's minds, women should be related to needlework. Why did she have to train and do rough work like a man? Her skin was soft and tender, and her arms were as thin as bamboo poles. What strength could she have? After Nongqin came out of nowhere, there was indeed a lot of criticism. There were also those who liked to talk dirty. Nongqin's face turned red and white. Meng Hun could say something when he saw it, but he could not protect her all the time. There were times when he could not take care of her. He said in a muffled voice, "I'm useless." Jiang Pingji sneered and said calmly, "What does it have to do with you? Nongqin trained hard and she will get back at herself. She doesn't need you to apologize. If you want to be recognized by others, you can only rely on your own strength. So what if you are a woman? Here only fists matter. If you are too protective of her, it will only make others ignore her hard work. Just watch her. As long as she doesn't go too far, you don't have to care about other things." When Nongqin beat up everyone who looked down on her, who would dare to look down on her? If they still looked down on her, she would beat them twice. The troop was a place where fists mattered. Gender didn't matter at all. If gender mattered, then a man who lost to a woman was not even as good as a weak woman. If he could not even beat a woman, what was the point of training? He could just go home and pick up an embroidery needle and learn how to do needlework. Tiske. A group of people who were itching for a beating. They all needed to be taught a lesson. When they arrived at the drill ground, Jiang Pingji saw Nongqin standing outside the crowd from afar. Her face was tense and her sweat was covered with dust. Her eyes were sharp and guarded. A man tried to talk to her, but he could not speak because of her cold stare. Seeing that, Jiang Pingji went forward and said, "Do you see the archery target in the distance?" The area was used as a drill ground. Although the facilities were simple, it was large and convenient for training. When she asked questions, many answered sparsely. Only Nongqin's voice was loud and firm. I see it. Jiang Pingji looked at the men who had grown stronger but were still a little undisciplined. Then she looked at Nongqin, whose face had become thinner. Chapter 209. Not only was Nongqin dumbfounded, but the other men were also speechless. The live streaming room was in an uproar. Xuanxiang Taisho, host, don't scare me. How can I hit the target from so far away? Fengji Liaoyuan, I believe the host can do it, but Nongqin can't do it, right? Han Yutong, I can see another girl who is about to evolve into a tough man. The audience in the live streaming room presented facts and reasoned that the possibility of Nongqin doing it was zero. It was not that they didn't believe it, but it was too unbelievable. Meng Han thought so too. With his eyesight, Jiang Pingji was at least 200 steps away from the target. Even a heavy bow of 1 pickle could not reach that distance. She needed a bow of more than 2 pickle. But 2 pickle. That was 200 kilograms, which was much heavier than an adult man. How could a weak girl like Nongqin draw a bow of 2 pickle? Can you do it? Jiang Pingji asked her. Nongqin was hesitant, but she made up her mind when she heard Jiang Pingji's question. Langjun, I can do it for you if you teach me. Jiang Pingji smiled. Smart girl, come here. I'll teach you. She untied the white cloth that wrapped the improved crossbow in her hand, and it fell to the ground, revealing the crossbow. Meng Han was stunned when he saw it. However, what surprised everyone was yet to come. Jiang Pingji whispered in Nongqin's ear, telling her how to use the improved crossbow. This crossbow has a strong recoil. When you use it, you must stabilize your lower body and learn how to release the force. If your lower body is not stable, the crossbow in your hand will deviate a little, which will cause you to miss the target. If the enemy doesn't die, you will. Jiang Pingji's voice was like a clear spring in the mountains, with a refreshing coldness that made people subconsciously focus their attention. Although the improved crossbow had a buffer and shock absorber, it could greatly reduce the instantaneous force of the arrow. However, this strength was still a bit strenuous for Nongqin now. You have enough time to aim at the target with the sighting device and balance your body. You don't have to be like a bow and arrow. You can't keep the bow and arrow open for a long time after pulling it back. Jiang Pingji helped Nongqin adjust herself and said with encouragement, this is the right angle. As soon as she finished her words, an arrow flew out of the crossbow. Even though Nongqin was mentally prepared, she was still shaken by the strong recoil. She staggered and fell to the ground. Before she could get up, her ears were filled with exclamations. Pa Nongqin was very lucky. Although the arrow didn't hit the bull's eye, it still hit the target and cracked half of it. The viewers in the live stream all sent a string of exclamation marks. They seemed to be quite shocked. This distance was already more than 200 steps. Not to mention whether ordinary people could aim at something that far away, just the requirement of arm strength was enough to scare off a large number of people. However, right in front of everyone's eyes, it was actually shot through by a thin and frail woman, and it even blew up. The arrow didn't stop because of that. Instead, it flew for dozens of steps before it pierced into the ground. Seeing that, Meng Han rushed forward and picked up the improved crossbow that Nongqin had thrown on the ground like a treasure. Nongqin was also stunned. She saw a fair and clean hand with a fragrance of soap in front of her. Get up. Nongqin bit her lips, pulled Jiang Pingji's hand and suddenly stood up. She hurried forward to check on the target and was also shocked by the violent scene. Was this really done by her? Nongqin blacked out and her heart raced. She raised her hands in disbelief. Was this really done by her? People often described a marksman as a sharpshooter, but she turned around to have a look. The distance between them was more than 100 steps. Meng Han was the chief coach and the former county chief of the Mengs. Naturally, he could see how terrifying the improved crossbow was. He had seen crossbows before, but compared with the ones he had seen before, the one in front of him seemed especially terrifying. It was very light and anyone with a little bit of strength could carry it. Besides, it could be pulled with the strength of the waist. Even a girl like Nongqin could use both her hands and feet, lean back, and gather all her strength to pull the string and put on the trigger. It was like a foot-mounted crossbow, using the strength of the arms, feet, and waist. However, the foot-mounted crossbow was different. The improved crossbow was a crossbow with arms, which was very convenient to carry and move. What made Meng Han's eyes brighten was that the recoil was very small, but the shooting range was really long. However, before he could finish his joy, he heard Jiang Pingji's cold words. Still not enough. A semi-finished product is still a semi-finished product. Meng Hun held the improved crossbow in his hands and looked confused. Still not enough? He didn't know that Jiang Pingji's words contained a lot of information. She had a pair of sharp eyes. Nongqin had only tested it once, but she had already seen several areas that needed to be improved. Does Lang Jun want to equip everyone with this kind of crossbow? Meng Hun suppressed the excitement in his heart. He couldn't wait to worship the improved crossbow in his hands. When the others heard Meng Hun's words, especially the subordinates that Meng Hun brought with him, their eyes lit up. Jiang Pingji said, "It's still a semi-finished product and it needs to be further improved. Because it's difficult to make and the cost is high, I can't make one for each person. I will only give it to the best. As for the others, hee." She took the improved crossbow from Meng Hun's hands and pulled the string with her arms skillfully, unlike Nongqin. Bang! An arrow target exploded from the center. Jiang Pingji's body was as steady as a pine tree. She didn't even shake a bit. She continued to pull the string and load the arrow. There was another sound of the arrow target exploding. It was completely broken. Meng Hun just realized that Jiang Pingji didn't aim at all. Or in other words, when she looked at the target, she already knew that she could hit the target without deliberately aiming. What kind of terrifying eyesight and accuracy was that? In this world, there's nothing that can't be done. The reason why I can't do it is because I don't know how to do it. She put down the crossbow and looked back with a bright smile. At that moment, it was as if the sun in the sky was overshadowed by her smile. Nongqin felt hot in her heart. Her eyes were burning as if there was an inexplicable force filling her limbs. She wanted to be like her Langjun. She pulled the string lightly, her body was as still as a pine tree, and her back was straight and unbent. It was as if she couldn't give in even if the sky collapsed. Yes, she was a woman, but so was her Langjun, who was younger than her. If she could do it, why couldn't she? Even if her current life was very difficult and the endless training made her physically and mentally exhausted, she felt very free and carefree. She couldn't imagine going back to her old life, and she didn't want to be forced to marry by her parents. She didn't want to live a mediocre life around a mediocre man, a group of noisy radishes, and a stove. Those muddle-headed, uneventful days had worn her numb. Could that be considered living? Strong thoughts filled Nongqin's mind and she was obsessed. Chapter 210. Nongqin looked at Jiang Pingji firmly and knelt down. The wound on her shoulder was still bleeding and stained her clothes. "Langjun, please teach me." Jiang Pingji looked at Nongqin with a faint smile. Nongqin felt uncomfortable under her gaze. After a long time she said, "What do you think I can teach you?" Nongqin was stunned. She didn't understand what she meant. Jiang Pingji said, "You practice hard, you work hard, and you don't want to admit defeat. That's enough. What I can teach you is how to maximize your advantages and make your body stronger. You have to rely on yourself for the rest." Women were at a disadvantage because of their physical structure, but it didn't mean that women were weak. In Jiang Pingji's world, the Federal Army was roughly divided into 14 corps. The corps commander was the highest commanding officer and was directly under the command of the commander-in-chief. Each corps had different responsibilities. For example, the 7th Corps led by Jiang Pingji belonged to the first echelon. It could be said that apart from the commander-in-chief, the corps commander was the most powerful person. In Jiang Pingji's generation, there were 8 female corps commanders and 6 male corps commanders. In the Federation, the strong were respected regardless of gender. Who could say that the corps commanders were weaker than the 6 male corps commanders because they were female? In fact, Jiang Pingji's personal combat ability could be ranked in the top 3 among the corps commanders. Physical structure wasn't absolute. It all depended on whether one had the desire to be strong. If others are stronger than you, then you have to learn how to attack faster. If others are faster than you, then you have to learn how to kill them with one blow. If others are stronger than you, then you have to learn the art of war and how to lead troops to war. You should never focus on your own shortcomings. You don't have to compare your shortcomings with others' strengths. It's not necessary. Every word Jiang Pingji said made Nongqin's heart pound uncontrollably, as if something was about to break out of her cocoon. She said, "Get up. You came to me to teach you something. I should teach you something." Nongqin stood up. Her knees were covered in dust. "I will come to the farm every day for a while. It's up to you what you can learn." Jiang Pingji raised her hands and pinched Nongqin's limbs. She said seriously, "The condition of your muscles and bones is fine. Is there a massage after training?" The massage list given by Jiang Pingji was not simple. It was prepared for military school students. It could maximize the effect of training, stimulate muscle nerve activity, and reduce the sequelae of the previous day's training. It could achieve twice the result with half the effort. After accumulating for a long time, those who were slightly younger would be able to further develop their bodies, effectively improving their physical qualities. Nongqin blushed and said in a low voice, "Yes, the head coach saw that I was suffering from training, so he asked the ant in the farm to learn to help me." Although that kind of full-body massage was very embarrassing, the effect was indeed very obvious. His muscles were sore and swollen, and he felt like he had soaked in a hot bath. She thought that she would be too tired to get up the next day, but unexpectedly after a good night's sleep, her limbs were only slightly sore. This level of fatigue did not affect his training at all. Jiang Pingji chuckled and praised him. "Meng Han is very attentive. Go and treat the wound on your shoulder and apply some medicine." Nongqin replied respectfully. "In another half a month, it's going to be the corporal selection, right?" Jiang Pingji looked at the rules and regulations she had set. Indeed, there would be a selection of sergeants once a month. Meng Han said, "Yes, Lang Jun. Nongqin is also participating. Spread the word that whoever loses to her will have to wash the clothes of the troops." Meng Han opened his mouth and asked, although Nongqin is working hard, if she wants to win, she was at a disadvantage in terms of body size. Jiang Pingji said meaningfully, "It's not impossible. No one knew better than her how to kill a person in the shortest time. Even if she was at a disadvantage, she could still take the enemy's life. Since she was teaching Nongqin, how could she not teach her something practical?" Meng Han felt a chill down his spine. He subconsciously felt that something was wrong, but he could not tell why. Song Prefecture was one of the 6 prefectures and 21 counties in Dongqing. The trade route to the north was smooth, and it was closely connected to the northern borderline. The two places exchanged goods, which attracted many merchants to do business there. Thus, the local economy was booming, and Song Prefecture became the largest prefecture in Dongqing. However, that prosperity was gone forever. Today, Song Prefecture was filled with depression and decadence. From time to time, roving bandits would rob merchants. The once bustling trade route was no longer what it used to be. A few shabbily dressed people sat by the roadside. Occasionally, rows of soldiers in the Meng family's uniform could be seen patrolling the streets with guns in their hands. They looked solemn as they interrogated suspicious people who were in a hurry. They secretly embezzled money, bullied and humiliated the people, seized the goods of merchants, and took the opportunity to extort money. The checkpoints in and out of Tsang Prefecture, especially in Meng County, were heavily guarded. Because of the bandits killing and robbing, the people had to leave their homes and stay at the city gate. They were in groups of 2 or 3. Their clothes were old and tattered, and they were emaciated. Their eyes were numb. "These damned beasts." A white-haired old beggar covered his face and sobbed as he avoided the soldiers. He was holding a skinny child in his arms. Upon closer inspection, the child's face was pale. There were a few bruises on his face. His eyes were closed and he had stopped breathing. The little beggar was picked up by the old beggar. He had been raised since he could speak until he was 12 years old. The old beggar thought that he would have someone to rely on for the rest of his life. Unexpectedly, his grandson was hungry and went out to beg. He accidentally dirted the shoes of a Meng family soldier and was beaten to death by him. How could this be the guardian of Dongqing and the people? They were obviously a group of jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards in human skin. They were evil spirits from hell. "What are you scolding, you old bastard?" A soldier with sharp ears heard some noise and walked forward while cursing. The old beggar decided to go all out. He spat at the soldier and said, "I'm scolding you bastards." After a while, there was a pool of blood on the roadside. An old beggar with several holes in his body was lying next to the body of a little beggar. The refugees at the side were already numb. Their eyes were like wooden beads. They didn't move at all, just like wooden statues. At this moment, the crisp sound of horse hooves could be heard from outside the city gate. The originally arrogant guards were like mice that met a cat. They became flattering and respectful, nodding and bowing. The person on the horse ignored the chaotic people and directly galloped into the city. "I have something to report to the county chief. Pass the message quickly." Chapter 211. The man staggered off the horse. His legs were unstable and he almost tripped on the ground. He looked like a mess. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lower lip, slightly relieving the stinging pain from his chapped lips. His bloodshot eyes were wide open as he knelt on the ground. While secretly slowing down his breathing, He secretly thought about the speech he had prepared before. After a long time, the sound of rustling footsteps could be heard from afar. That person hurriedly pinched his thigh, using the pain to dispel his drowsy consciousness. His chest was beating like thunder, and the powerful heartbeat was extremely clear in his ears. He lowered his head and saw a greenish-brown figure pass by him. The figure went straight to the seat of honor and sat down. There was a sweet smell in the air. Even though Meng County was in chaos, Meng Zhan, the leader of the Mengs and the county chief of Meng County, still lived a delicate life. After a while, the man on the seat of honor asked him, "Has Second Langjun arrived in Shangjing?" His voice was calm and steady for his age. His tone was elegant and graceful, as if he was reciting a poem. This kind of tone was popular in the past 2 years. It was a popular fashion among the aristocratic families. Many people purposely followed it and tried to be cultured. Some people learned it and sounded pretentious like a male duck with a hoarse voice. People who didn't know better would think that the person had a problem with his voice. Some people had a unique voice. Their tone seemed to be tailor-made for them. Once they opened their mouths, they sounded elegant. Meng Zhan belonged to the latter. Many aristocratic ladies in Sangzhou secretly praised him for his elegance. He could suck people's souls away when he opened his mouth. The face of the squire on the ground darkened. He knocked his head on the ground. The sound was deep and powerful. Even the ground trembled. The squire's blood drained from his face. His face was as white as paper. He knocked his head on the ground, but his fingers were still shaking. His palms quickly secreted sweat, which soon became damp, revealing the uneasiness in his heart. "I'm useless. I couldn't do what you asked of me. Second Langjun." Second Langjun was captured by that traitor, Meng Hun. Meng Zhan's eyes turned cold. He threw the teacup in his hand. It hit the squire's forehead and the hot tea splashed on his face. Second Langjun was captured by Meng Hun? He opened his peach blossom eyes slightly, and the corners of his eyes were slightly raised. He asked in a sinister tone, "I sent a team of you there, but you couldn't even protect the Second Langjun. What use do the Meng family have for you pieces of trash?" The squire, who could be arrogant in front of ordinary people and even the Hejin county chief, didn't dare to defend himself. As Meng Zhan's squire, he knew what was right. Arguing would only make Meng Zhan even angrier and angrier. There was a wound on his forehead and blood was flowing out. The tea stains mixed with the blood were all over his face, but he didn't dare to raise his hand to wipe it off. After waiting for a while, Meng Zhan's anger had cooled down a little. The servant said in a trembling voice, "Please don't be angry, Leo. It's not that I didn't protect Second Langjun to the best of my ability. It's just that Meng Hun and his gang are too cunning and insidious." He was the leader of the Mengs and the Meng county chief's man. Meng Zhan could understand something as simple as this. He was the leader of the Mengs and the Meng county chief's man. He could see something as simple as this. If Meng Liang was already dead, this cowardly squire wouldn't dare to return to Meng County. He would have run away. "You're wise, Meng Zhan. That traitor wanted to take Second Langjun as a hostage to extort money. I was afraid that the traitor wouldn't treat Second Langjun well, so I rode fast. I exhausted more than 10 horses to come back and report the news to Meng Zhan." He took out an object wrapped in silk and held it above his head respectfully. "Please examine it, Meng Zhan." Meng Zhan winked at the maid beside him. The silk package was presented to him. He opened it. There were 2 scrolls inside. One was written by Meng Liang. It sounded proud and full of disdain for Meng Hun's actions. The other was written by a stranger. It simply stated that they didn't have to kill Meng Liang, but Meng Hun had to fulfill their demands. Meng Liang only said he would give 500 dong, but this scroll changed it to 2,000 dong. Born as a peasant, he is short-sighted. Meng Zhan threw the letter aside. His eyes were full of disdain and contempt. The head of the entourage swallowed and said, "Master, the grain. Are we really going to give it to him?" Meng Zhan said casually. His peach blossom eyes were filled with arrogance. "Of course I'm going to give it to him." The head of the entourage was shocked. "It's only 2,000 dong. Only a peasant like him would value it so much." Meng Zhan snorted and said coldly, "Follow my order. Go to the granary and transfer 3,000 dong. Send a team to deliver the grain. Do everything for Second Langjun's safety. As long as he takes the grain, we'll forget everything. Just take it as my final farewell fee for him as the boss." The head of the entourage was stunned. 3,000 dong of grain? Give it all to Meng Hun? Meng Hun was asking for an exorbitant price, but he only asked for 2,000 dong. Meng Zhan saw that the head of the entourage was confused. He laughed inside and didn't bother to explain. Why did Meng Hun betray the Mengs? Why did he burn down the rearguard commandery? Why did he chase after Meng Liang for thousands of miles? Wasn't it all in the name of revenge for his wife and daughter? Now 2,000 dong was enough to make Meng Hun give up killing Meng Liang. What did it mean? It meant that the innocence and even the life of his wife and daughter could be bought off with 2,000 dong of grain. That was the price. If that was the case, as his old boss, he should be more generous. Meng Hun sold his wife and daughter, and he was kind enough to give an extra 1,000 dong. It seemed to be a generous gesture, but it was actually disdain and humiliation. 3,000 dong of grain was not even a drop in the bucket for the Mengs. If Meng Hun dared to take the grain, the Mengs would spread the news when Meng Liang was safe. From then on, the man who wanted to avenge his wife and daughter would become a liar. He would sell them all for some grain. When the lady in the backyard heard that Meng Liang had been caught, she was worried and frightened at first, but she soon calmed down. She gracefully picked up a pastry and said with disdain, "This is how the lowly people are born. They have no backbone. They would do anything for a grain. This is considered selling their wife and daughter. If you knew this would happen, why did you do it? If you lost your wife and daughter, you could just remarry and have another child. You made such a big fuss that you lost your position as the county commandery. You made my son suffer and made Langjun work so hard for Meng County. Meng Hun's wife and daughter were just lowly people. How could they be compared to Meng Liang, who was of noble blood?" She didn't even blame the mother and daughter for tarnishing Meng Liang's reputation. Achoo! Meng Hun sneezed and raised his hand to pinch his itchy nose. The two troops around him stared at him. Chapter 212. Meng Hun looked around and made sure everyone was on standby. He was satisfied and was about to reply to Jiang Pingji. As the saying goes, a gentleman doesn't stand under a dangerous wall. How can you put yourself in danger? Suku was getting more and more patient with his stubborn Langjun. He couldn't change her mind. Jiang Pingji was dressed in dark brown with simple decorations. She looked like a capable and experienced fighter, not a noble child of an aristocratic family. She sat on the ground and looked at Suku with a faint smile. "Xiaoyu, you're becoming more and more like a housekeeper. You know that I'm not weak. If it weren't for the sake of training these inexperienced brats, I could have killed all the bandits in the village by myself." She said it with great enthusiasm, but Suku felt like his brain was going to explode. He had to persuade her. "I admire your extraordinary martial arts, but it doesn't mean you have to fight in person. You just need to guard the rear and give orders. As the saying goes, a rich man doesn't sit under the eaves and a rich man doesn't ride a horse. It's fortunate that you don't take advantage of danger. Even a random punch could kill an old master. Knives and swords had no eyes. What if Langjun was accidentally hurt by those outlaws?" Jiang Pingji smiled. "Don't argue with me. I understand, but I just don't want to do it." As soon as he said that, Suku looked as if he had nothing left to live for. The viewers in the live stream burst into laughter again. They really felt sorry for Suku. Su Huanxing, haha, I'm quick. I think I can add a sentence to Suku's expression. "I'm so angry. What can I do? I'm helpless." To be honest, Suku might even want to jump ship to a boss as difficult as the streamer. Gong Sun Seun, he can't. Suku's contract is still in the hands of the evil streamer. He'll be squeezed dry for the rest of his life. Dashu Xiaobing, contract? TSK. Evil landlord. I support Suku's rebellion. Paydaxing, what's the use of support? Just send some gifts. Maybe the streamer won't be so evil if she's in a good mood. As if responding to Paydaxing's words, a series of gifts popped up in the background of the system. There were so many gifts that the entire screen was flooded. Lao Cg Lianming, TSK Tisk, why don't I like hearing this? He said, I've been following this live stream for more than a month, but I've never seen a streamer ask for a reward or trick the audience into asking for a reward. If you say that, it seems like the host is very scheming. Patrick Starr, I didn't mean to say that the streamer is scheming, I was just saying, Jiang Pingji never asked for tips, nor did she play any tricks. If the audience liked to tip, they would tip. If they didn't like it, they would just watch the stream quietly. Even so, the amount of tips still increased as the stream went on. Slowly, it showed a terrifying trend. In the face of the tide-like rewards, the system was so happy that it couldn't find the north. The more tips Jiang Pingji received, the more points of popularity it would receive. After all, the system and the streamer would split the points equally. It was a pity that Jiang Pingji did not adopt the few tricks that it had set up. If she had, the rewards would have been 10 times more than what she was getting now. While he felt that it was a pity, he was also drooling as he looked at the endless stream of rewards. Jiang Pingji said to the system in her mind, "You can start the semi-interactive live stream mode now. Just hang up the topic that I've set." As soon as she finished speaking, the system diligently did as she was told. The next second, all the audience saw a subtitle in the live stream room: Bandit Suppression in the Deep Mountains, 1. That was the theme of the task of the semi-interactive live stream mode, Bandit Suppression. Meng Hun did not let her down. Under his leadership, all the troops' training was on the right track. The troops, which were originally unskilled and undisciplined, were starting to take shape. After a month of hard training, everyone's physical fitness had improved to different extents. They were much weaker than the regular troops, but compared to the motley crowd of bandits, they were definitely much stronger. "Langjun, how can you be so capricious?" Suku had lost count of how many times he had sighed because of Jiang Pingji. "Anyway, it's not the first time. You'll get used to it. I cherish my life and ordinary people can't hurt me." Jiang Pingji smiled at him and comforted him. "Xiaoyu, you should have some confidence in me. If this motley crew is worthy of me cowering and seeking protection behind them, how can I achieve great things in the future? From now on, the battle will only be bigger than now." It was just a small fight, but Suku kept nagging. What would happen in the future? Even though Suku had a lot to say, he was like a deflated ball in front of Jiang Pingji. He was speechless. At that moment, the tall and sturdy Meng Hun came in and said to Jiang Pingji, "Langjun, everything is ready." "Well, I see." After that, Jiang Pingji took out 2 rolls of coarse cloth from her sleeves and spread them out. Between the 2 rolls of coarse cloth, the larger one had an irregular shape. On it was a geographical map drawn by charcoal. It was the mountains and streams near Hejin County. In addition, there were many symbols with different meanings on it. It was so densely packed that it dazzled people's eyes. "This place is our next target." I secretly went there to investigate and drew a rough map. After that, Jiang Pingji spread out the other roll of coarse cloth. On it was a map of the bandit village and the distribution of the people at each checkpoint. Jiang Pingji had just informed them yesterday that she would take some people to suppress the bandits. Time was very tight. It would take a lot of time just to pack things and prepare food. Meng Hun was worried that his Langjun would act recklessly and wanted to have a good talk with her in private, but he didn't expect that she had made thorough preparations. Meng Hun stared at the detailed map of the bandit village like a tiger. He was fascinated by it and simulated the action and tactics in his mind. Suku was the only one who paid attention to something else. His face darkened and he asked, "Langjun, did you say that this is the map you found yourself?" Meng Hun clapped his hands and said, "This way of drawing is indeed very clear." "If it is used as a scout," Suku interrupted him coldly, "this is not the point. The point is, when did you go into the mountains alone to find out the details of the bandits' village? It was more dangerous than going out to suppress the bandits herself." Meng Hun was stunned. He finally understood why Suku looked so pale. The map on the coarse cloth was drawn by Jiang Pingji herself. What did that mean? It meant that she had gone into the mountains alone to find out the strongholds of the bandits' villages one after another. Facing Meng Hun and Suku's disapproving eyes, Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. She was not alone. Didn't she have 10,000 experienced viewers in the live streaming room? Moreover, she had done this kind of pioneering work countless times in the past. She didn't have to go deep into the bandits' village. She had her own ways to get information. Chapter 213. Suku said helplessly, "Langjun, you're right, but it still can't erase the fact that you put yourself in danger. You're not hurt, but it doesn't mean that what you did was not dangerous. I just hope that you'll think twice before doing anything in the future. Don't be reckless." He didn't know Jiang Pingji very well, but he knew that his Langjun was very capricious. It was useless to dissuade her. But if he didn't pursue it now, would he pursue it when it was over? Aha, he knew what the result would be without thinking. I know. I'll think twice before doing anything in the future. Is that okay?" Jiang Pingji pointed to the sky and agreed. As long as Suku didn't talk about her now, she would deal with it later. She was a typical person who would admit her mistakes actively and never repent. "Now let's talk about the deployment." Jiang Pingji coughed and quickly changed the topic to avoid Suku's nagging. She had no way to deal with this kind of motherly person. Suku sighed secretly. He couldn't do anything to Jiang Pingji after all. When it came to business, Suku also put on a serious expression. He carefully looked at the structure of the bandits' village and came to a conclusion. The layout of the bandits' village is messy. It can be seen that this is just a small village gathered by a motley crew. In fact, most of the bandits' villages in the mountains near Hejian County were disorganized and undisciplined. With brute force and the advantage of numbers, they burned, killed, and looted everywhere. Ordinary people were unarmed and didn't put their lives on the line like the bandits. Naturally, they couldn't defeat the bandits. Although Jiang Pingji's small troop had only been trained for a month, there were veterans brought by Meng Hun. Everyone had gone through preliminary systematic training, so they were far better than the bandits in terms of organization and discipline. Even if they hadn't seen blood, they were more cooperative and efficient than the bandits. Jiang Pingji said, "That's why we chose this village first. We'll let these wolf cubs see blood first, so that their hands won't tremble when they chop off people's heads in the future." Xiaoyu, although Hejian County is not a big place, it's also a place with many hidden talents. Su Ku focused all his attention on the deployment. Listening to Jiang Pingji's words, it was obvious that there was another meaning. "Lang Jun, what do you mean? Pick the soft persimmon and start with the small bandits. Let's use these people as practice first so that the troops can grow quickly," Jiang Pingji said. "It was the same principle as killing monsters to level up. I've searched the nearby bandit strongholds and found no less than 100 nests with about 10,000 people. Why do you think the Hejian County chief didn't send troops to eradicate such a huge hidden danger? It's not that I don't want to, but I can't do it." Meng Hun listened carefully and exclaimed, "More than 100 bandit strongholds? Nearly 10,000 bandits? How could the Hejian County chief allow them to develop and grow with such a huge hidden danger? It was simply unbelievable." Jiang Pingji pointed at the first piece of rough cloth and said, "Look at these mountains. They are steep and dangerous, and the mountains are high and the forests are deep. This is the bandits' biggest amulet. Ordinary people would be lucky if they didn't get lost, not to mention exploring the terrain and finding out the exact location of the bandits' stronghold. Hejian County has no way to deal with these bandits. The terrain is one of the problems, and the other is that these bandits communicate with each other and keep in touch with each other. In the past, Hejian County had also sent troops to suppress the bandits, but when the troops arrived, the bandits' stronghold was already empty. Not only that, these bandits also relied on their understanding of the terrain to ambush the soldiers, causing heavy losses in the previous attempts to suppress the bandits. How could they be so arrogant?" Su Ku carefully looked at the simple drawing on the rough cloth and said, "If so, we must not let a single bandit escape in this operation. We must either kill them all or capture them. If one of them escapes, it will be difficult to deal with them in the future." Jiang Pingji's goal was not to kill one bandit stronghold. She intended to clean up all the bandit strongholds. If she accidentally let a small bandit escape, it would alarm other bandit strongholds and arouse their vigilance. It would be difficult for her to take action again. "That's right. So, even if it's a small bandit stronghold, we can't take it lightly," Jiang Pingji said seriously. "If we can persuade them to surrender, we can recruit some of them at our discretion. If they don't repent or if they have a criminal record, we can just kill them all. It's useless to persuade them to surrender. Keeping them will only spoil the atmosphere." When Jiang Pingji said, "Just kill them all," both Meng Hun and Su Ku felt an invisible murderous intent. Su Ku already knew Jiang Pingji's method of expanding the troop. Although he frowned at her action, he did not oppose it. Meng Hun was full of pride. Meng Hun cupped his hands and praised, "Longjuan's breadth of mind is admirable. According to people's current thinking, it would be fine if the bandits were not caught. If they were caught, they would be killed. Wouldn't it be better to keep them alive?" However, Jiang Pingji was willing to give them a chance to turn over a new leaf. Although it was selective in Meng Hun's view, it was kindness. The audience in the streaming room deeply felt that their views were completely different from the host and her two subordinates. Mozhang Huakai Huanwangui, I think Chief Coach Meng Hun and Accountant Su Ku seem to have misunderstood the host. How is the host being kind? She obviously doesn't have money, but she wants people, so she went to the bandits. These bandits are also pitiful. They are sitting at home, but trouble comes from the sky. Not only will their lives be in danger, but they will also have to work for the host for the rest of their lives. Lao Ciji Lianming, it's not terrible to work for them. What's terrible is that they have to be grateful to the host while working for her. Tunhua Lameng, ha, the two above are calm. Muyu Qingfeng, hee hee, it's nothing. When the bandits are wiped out, the loot will probably belong to the host. To be honest, it's not easy for the bandits to live. They worked so hard to save their belongings, but they will be taken away by the Oriole. Jiang Pingji glanced at the bullet screen in the streaming room. and then continued to discuss the deployment with a calm face. Although it was a discussion, it was actually Suku talking, Meng Hun adding, and she listening. The operation to wipe out the bandits was not only a whetstone for the troop, but also a training for Suku and Meng Hun. After all, Meng Hun was the former captain of the Mengs. He had led troops, fought in wars, and wiped out bandits. He was an experienced veteran. Compared with him, Suku was a rookie who had never experienced anything. Even if he was talented, it was just empty talk without experience. Chapter 214. When Jiang Pingji drew the general structure of the bandits' village, she also thought about it. Suku had the same thought as her. That's feasible, but there are 2 watchtowers in the village. What will you do if you want to get close to them without alerting anyone? Suku pondered for a while, then pointed to another place and said, "This village is built on the hillside. It's hidden by the mountain, so it's hard for ordinary people to find them. It's the most natural protective barrier of the village, but it's also a fatal place. Tonight, the moonlight is clear, but the shadows are thick and gloomy. If we lurk and attack from here, the watchtower's minions may not find us." The shadow cast by the mountain was directed at the bandits' village. After all, not everyone had excellent night vision like Jiang Pingji. What's more, Lang Jun asked us to cover ourselves with branches and weeds to blend into the surrounding environment. With the night shadow and the method of cover, it's impossible for experienced veterans to find us in such a high mountain and deep forest, let alone the motley crew. Jiang Pingji glanced at Meng Hun, who nodded to her and agreed with Suku's words. They didn't know the surrounding environment as well as the local bandits, but they still had the advantage. After all, Suku was good at internal affairs, not at dispatching troops. Jiang Pingji asked him to talk about her ideas just to provide more ideas. She was the one who made the final decision, and Meng Hun was the one who carried it out. She was just there to hold the fort. Everyone had their own duties and the division of labor was clear. One of Jiang Pingji's principles was, if you can do it, then do it. If you can't, then let the capable do it. If you don't have the ability, then don't compete. Meng Hun obviously belonged to the capable category, so Jiang Pingji was very confident in him. Although they had fewer people now, the scale of the bandits' village they had to destroy was not large. So, as long as the deployment was right, it would not be difficult to win. The difficult thing was that Jiang Pingji wanted to catch the bandits alive and select the manpower that could be absorbed from them. If that was the case, then they couldn't kill him and they couldn't even injure him to the point where he was half dead. Because it would take too long to recover, and they also needed to invest energy and extra money. It was not cost-effective in terms of investment. Meng Hun seemed to be reckless, but he was actually very careful. After comprehensive consideration, he had a plan in his mind. "I'll go to the sergeants and instruct them on the raid tonight." Meng Hun cupped his hands and left. "Well, you can go now." The size of the troop was still very small, so for the time being, there were 5 people in the troop. To increase the pressure and motivation of the troops, Jiang Pingji also formulated a series of rules and regulations when she established the troops. For example, there was a monthly assessment for the selection of sergeants. Nongqin was one of them. The sergeants sat on the other sergeants and tried to keep a distance from Nongqin. Nongqin Yao Kupeng. And Nongqin. Just a few days ago, there was a reshuffle within the troop to select a new corporal. Nongqin was the only one who got the position. This time, no one dared to speak ill of her behind her back, because she had passed all the trials in the drill ground in front of everyone. No one knew that the girl who usually looked quiet and unassuming could be so ruthless when she fought. In terms of strength, she wasn't as strong as these men, but her attacks were extremely cunning and fast. Many people didn't even have time to react before their hands were clamped behind their backs, unable to move and kneeling on the ground. There was also an ignorant boy who bullied Nongqin because she was a girl and tried to attack her chest. Who knew that the boy almost lost his penis? They were men. They didn't know how women felt when their breasts were grabbed, but they knew that if their family jewels were kicked, it would be so painful that they would grimace in pain and curl up on the ground, unable to straighten their backs. Fortunately, that kid was slow and didn't manage to grab it. Otherwise, they had every reason to believe that Nongqin would have crushed the boy's penis with her feet. He could not have fooled around with any girl, but he had to provoke this Rakshasa's daughter. Meng Hun explained the details of the deployment to everyone. "Do any of you have any questions about this?" Except for Nongqin, the other sergeants were all trained by him. They had a tacit understanding with each other and he trusted their abilities. They were all experienced veterans, much better than the servants Jiang Pingji bought from the broker house. It was normal for them to be sergeants. The other sergeants all shook their heads, indicating that there was no problem. Meng Hun was secretly satisfied, and then he turned his eyes to Nongqin, who was silent. Do you have any questions? Nongqin frowned and said, What you mean is that we should catch all the bandits alive and try not to cause too much damage? She couldn't imagine what was the use of keeping those bandits alive. That's right. Meng Hun added, This is also Lang Juan's idea. We are short of people now. Nongqin nodded and said, I understand. We will do as Lang Jun says. Jiang Pingji gave Nongqin a crash course. Most of the skills and methods she taught were assassination and sneak attacks, which emphasized on miraculous effects. She needed to make others acknowledge her in the shortest time possible, instead of denying her because she was a girl. If it was a head-on confrontation, Nongqin might not be able to withstand it, but she felt she was competent for sneak attacks. Meng Hun said, If there is no objection, we will take action at 11 o'clock. According to Jiang Pingji's observation, the shift at the gate of the bandit stockade and the lookout tower was also regular. According to Jiang Pingji's observation, the shift was about 4 hours. At 11 o'clock, it was the first shift after dinner. It was late at night and people were sleepy and tired, so they were not focused. It was the right time to launch a sneak attack. Of course, in order to prevent her people from being too tired, Jiang Pingji asked them to take a nap in advance to recharge. Covered with weeds and branches, it was hard to find the troops even in the daytime, not to mention in the dark night. Jiang Pingji played with the improved crossbow with 2 arrows beside her. When the time was up, she would immediately take action and kill the 2 minions in the lookout tower first. Without the lookout tower, no one would find the troops in advance, so the entire bandit stockade was nothing to worry about. After getting everything ready, Jiang Pingji turned her head and saw Suku looking at the sky with a sad but beautiful look. Are you crying? Suku was confused. He looked at her with clear eyes and asked seriously, Langjun, what do you mean? Jiang Pingji thought about the bullet screen of the old driver in the streaming room. In fact, she was also one of the people who had been enlightened, but she didn't understand the joke before. She said seriously, Raising your head can make your tears flow back. Suku was speechless. One could imagine how the audience in the streaming room laughed. How could they expect an ancient person to understand the pain of non-mainstream teenagers in their era? Chapter 215. Astrology? What's so interesting about all the stars in the sky? So what do you see? Astrological divination and whatnot, in her opinion, were all nonsense. It was ridiculous to talk about gods and spirits with someone who had fought in the galaxy and wandered around a few planets. Suka didn't know what Jiang Pingji was thinking. He said honestly, I'm not good at astrology. I can only see that there's something strange about Ziwei Star. He wasn't like the other aristocratic families who had a lot of educational resources. He didn't even have enough books to read, let alone a famous teacher. It could be said that in the month he stayed in the Lu residence, he had read dozens or even hundreds of times more books than before. How could a commoner compare to the accumulation of knowledge of an aristocratic family? Suka couldn't even be considered a commoner now. At most, he was a lowly commoner who carried a crime on his back. There's something strange about Ziwei Star? What do you mean? Jiang Pingji looked up at the stars in the sky. She couldn't figure out anything. Suku hugged his knees and pointed at the bright star in the sky. He said, Langjun, look. That's Ziwei Star. It's bright and dark and there's a heart flickering around it. It's a jinx. It means that there's a hidden danger around Ziwei Star. Jiang Pingji sneered and said, It's just a few stars. What do you mean by corresponding lifespan? It's nonsense. Suku was stunned. Why didn't she follow the script? He tilted his head and saw his Langjun hugging her knees beside him. Her side profile was a little blurred by the night, but the light in her eyes was especially bright in the dark. Jiang Pingji said in a gentle voice, I don't think there's any basis for astrology. Those shining stars are celestial bodies or suns that are very far away from us. They seem unreachable, but the future is hard to predict. You said that Ziwei Star represents an emperor, but the world is divided into 5 countries. There are 5 emperors. Xiaoyu, which one do you think Ziwei Star represents? Suku was stumped by her question. He thought for a while and said, I don't know why you think so, but astrology may not be nonsense. The layman watches the show while the expert sees the artistry. As for Ziwei Star, in my opinion, there's only one emperor. The rest are all fake emperors. Jiang Pingji listened attentively, to the point that Suku thought he had convinced her. Unexpectedly, she suddenly burst into laughter. Her expression was a little painful as she tried to hold back her laughter. Xiaoyu, this is the first time I've realized that you're kind of cute. Jiang Pingji laughed for a long time, which made Suku feel embarrassed. He secretly gritted his teeth and suppressed his temper. He asked, Langjun, are you playing tricks on me again? No. I never meant that. Jiang Pingji said this, but she still had a smile on her face. It was not convincing. When she was done laughing, she continued, an emperor is never determined by a single star. The same goes for fate. She believed that old monk Chen could see the emperor's purple aura, but she didn't believe that the purple aura could prove anything. Even monk Liao Chen himself said that the purple chi could not guarantee that she would ascend to the 9-5 realms in the future. In the end, these things were all illusory. After a while, Jiang Pingji asked, Xiaoyu, is it difficult for poor people to study? Suka didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Langjun, aren't you asking the obvious? Jiang Pingji said, maybe in another 10 or even 20 or 30 years, everyone will be able to afford it. It's not a privilege for a small group of people. He didn't expect that to be what she was going to say. He almost couldn't react for a moment. He said with some yearning, if that's the case, it will definitely be a peaceful and prosperous era that everyone yearns for. Lao Ciji Lianming, I had a feeling that the streamer's streaming room will be broadcast for a long time, maybe a lifetime. I'm a person without perseverance. Maybe I'll give up after a month or two, but now I feel that I'll keep going, maybe for a lifetime. Not for anything else, but for the streamer's words just now, I also want to see such a peaceful and prosperous era. Paydaxing, this once again proves that this streaming room is very positive, even if the streamer has no morals. Cafeteria Dafinanti, Lao Ciji Lianming, unruly people, this is my confession to the streamer. Nongfu Shangquan Yudiangshuan, hey, Yao Ling? There's a group of unruly people who want to compete with me for my favor. I'll reward them with 10 feet of red. There will be. Everything will be there. Jiang Pingji looked at the sky and calculated the time. But we have to take it one step at a time. If we go too far, we'll easily pull our balls. We can't be fat even if we eat a mouthful of rice. Before we realize this lofty and ambitious dream, we have to get rid of the bandits first. Suku was dumbfounded. Lao Ciji Lianming, I feel sorry for Suku every day. Yaoling Shu, sorry +1. I always feel that the streamer likes to make Suku's blood boil, or when he's about to burst into tears, she suddenly says something that kills the mood and destroys the atmosphere. It's so embarrassing. Even a normal person will get cancer of embarrassment. Tao Danio, I believe that this is the streamer's bad taste for Suku's teenage love. I don't know if it's love, but it's definitely a bad taste. Here, put it on. Don't catch a cold. Jiang Pingji threw the cloak that her maid had prepared for her to Suku and let him put it on. The weather had warmed up a lot. Many people had put on their spring clothes, which were made of thin material. Suku was no exception. But he had underestimated the temperature in the deep mountains. The air was still damp and it was cold to the bone. Holding the cloak, Suku hesitated for a long time before he put it on. The lining of the cloak was made of rabbit fur. It was not thick, but it was very warm. It immediately separated him from the cold outside, and his thighs and arms did not have to shiver in the cold. Langjun, aren't you afraid of the cold? Suku asked. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, it's so cold. How can it be cold? I'm not a delicate little boy who's afraid of the cold. Suku looked down at himself, who was tightly wrapped, and then at his Langjun, who was dressed in neat clothes. He was suspicious and kept silent. Let's stop talking. Time's up. As soon as she finished speaking, Meng Hun had secretly commanded a troop to hide in the shadows and approach the entrance of the stockade village. The sergeant of the troop was Nongqin. Jiang Pingji held a crossbow in one hand and pulled the string with the other. Her snow-white wrist was exposed, which looked particularly delicate in the cold moonlight. She easily put an arrow on the bow and aimed at the watchtower nearly 300 meters away. Whoosh, the arrow shot out and there was a slight sound of breaking air. She calmly put the second arrow on the bow and it was also neat. The time difference was less than 1 second. 2 small minions of the watchtower were killed by an arrow through the heart. Half of their bodies were on the crossbar and blood was gurgling. At the same time, the troop led by Nongqin also took action. 2 breaths later, there were 3 bodies lying at Nongqin's feet. She smiled shyly at the sergeant. She didn't want to kill anyone, but she practiced the art of assassination, so she casually broke the man's neck. Chapter 216. With the arrows as an order, many black figures sneaked into the bandit stockade, hiding in the shadows like ghosts. Nongqin's face was cold, and her eyes were dark and frighteningly cold. It was probably because it was not the first time that she had killed someone, so she was very calm. Her mind was not filled with fear or hesitation, but the voice of her Lang Jun when he taught her how to kill. Her mind was clearer than ever. Every time she sent someone to heaven, she became calmer. At that moment, she understood why her Lang Jun said that some feelings could not be expressed in words, and only by doing it herself could she understand it. Her hands were steady and scary, but there was a burning impulse in her chest that could spread to her limbs and burn all her senses. She was no longer a lowly servant girl who could be bullied by the servants. On the contrary, her hands could now control other people's lives. Crack. The sound of bones breaking rang in the silent night. She threw the dead bandits aside and didn't even bother to look at them. Looking at her subordinates, Nongqin curled her lips and made a few hand gestures to give orders. Under such circumstances, verbal communication would expose one's position and alert the enemy. Due to the technological level of this era, Jiang Pingji couldn't make any epic-making communication equipment. She simply used the simple hand gestures she learned in the military school and forced every member of the troop to remember every hand gesture. Some of the members had teased Nongqin before, but now they were so scared by her that their legs became weak. They didn't dare to look down on her anymore. She was not a female worm but a female Rakshasa. She didn't move much, but she quickly grabbed the enemy's neck with both hands. In the blink of an eye, the neck was broken. Seeing that, the members couldn't help but touch their necks secretly, and they felt a chill down their spine. Their necks were the same, but looking at Nongqin's movements, they felt that the bandits' necks were made of paper. Their necks were all the same, but looking at Nongqin's movements, they felt that the bandits' necks were made of paper. Damn it. Burp. That girl is so delicate and tender. It's a pity that we don't know when we will get our turn. Boss and the others really don't know how to restrain themselves. They have already killed a few of them. Every time we can only watch them eat the meat and we can't even drink the leftovers. A bandit loosened his belt, took out something and scattered it on the grass. When he spoke, his breath reeked of alcohol. The tip of his thick nose was red, and his eyes were slightly squinted, looking a little misty. His companion laughed and said, "He's the boss. If he doesn't eat meat, do you think he'll let you eat? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? Go, go, go. When did I say that?" The bandit from before released his stock. His stomach, which had been suffocating for a long time, finally felt a little better. He hurriedly shook his body, intending to fasten his belt. This is such a desolate place, and there's no woman to relieve my boredom. Isn't it too suffocating? Boss and the others are having fun every time. That sound can be heard from the entrance of the village. I'm not allowed to complain anymore. His partner laughed at him. Hey, you can just say that you miss girls. That bandit spat out a mouthful of saliva. Bah, I want to, but you dare to say you don't want to? The two of them had a night patrol mission, so they did not dare to sneak out for too long. They fastened their belts and prepared to rush back. Wait. Just as they were about to leave, the bandit was stopped by his partner. He said angrily, "If you want girls, go find them. Don't hold my hand. Get lost. Seriously, look over there. Isn't there something there?" Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other and felt a little uneasy. They were afraid that there were poisonous snakes or monsters hiding in the grass. When they thought of what they had just done, their hearts beat faster and faster, and their hands and feet began to become cold. "It seems to be a person. Go and see." "It's a person?" Before the bandit could react, his partner pushed him from behind. He lost his balance and fell into the grass. His face was stained with turbid liquid, which was suffocating. At the same time, his hands touched a strange cold soft object. Ghost. The bandit was so scared that he forgot where he was. He suddenly jumped up from the ground and crawled in the opposite direction. The other partner was also shocked. His hand trembled, and he directly threw away the flint in his hand. "What are you shouting for?" Just as the two of them were scared out of their wits and were about to run away together, their leader came looking for them. "There is a ghost, boss. There. It's a cold ghost." The bandit in front was scared out of his wits. His liquid-stained face was full of horror, and he pointed at the grass with trembling hands. What the hell? After the leader heard this, he was anxious, but he didn't want to lose face as a bandit leader. He calmed himself down and said stubbornly, "I'd like to see what kind of thing is playing tricks on me. Too good for nothings. How could they be so scared?" He took a step forward and kicked the grass. Sure enough, he kicked a heavy object, which scared the boss immediately. However, it was also because of this that the heavy object flipped over, revealing a face that was dripping with blood and had its eyes wide open. Under the bleak moonlight, it seemed especially terrifying. This man died with a grievance and his neck was twisted in a weird way. They were shocked at first, but then they quickly realized that this man, wasn't he the gatekeeper but face? Nonsense. What the hell? Someone is attacking the stronghold. The boss reacted quickly. He was so angry that his veins were popping and his eyes were like bells. Attacking the stronghold? At this time? The other two bandits also came to their senses, but they were so scared that their limbs went limp. For a moment they couldn't even stand up. Good for nothings. The boss cursed, turned around and ran while shouting, "Wake up, there is an attack." Whoosh, there was a slight sound of something breaking through the air. An arrow streaked across the night sky like a streak of silver light, piercing through the man's neck from one side and exiting from the other. Oh, a fish that escaped the net. A voice as cold as water came from above. Jiang Pingji was standing on a nearby roof, and the crossbow in her hand had just fallen. The two bandits were scared out of their wits. They watched as the bandit leader's neck burst into a beautiful flower of blood, and the thick smell of blood spread. Then, with a bang, they fell to the ground. It was too fast for them to react. Hearing the voice, the two of them turned their necks stiffly. The person was reflected in the moonlight, holding a strange crossbow in his hand. The person's eyes seemed to be stained with frost, and it was frighteningly cold. Capture these two as well. Jiang Pingji glanced at the two frightened bandits and said to the troops who rushed over, "Search this stronghold again to see if there are any fish that escaped the net. If they are obedient, keep them alive. If they resist, kill them directly." Chapter 217. Tut tut tut. Xiaoyu, look, some of these bandits were forced to become bandits and some of them just want to reap without sowing and rely on robbing other people's labor resources. They work hard to farm for a year, but it's not as much as the profit of one job for these bandits. The hall was filled to the brim with boxes. Jiang Pingji crossed her legs and leaned against the main seat as if she had no bones. She pointed at the open boxes below with her fair fingers, and her eyes swept over the bandits who were tied up with their hands tied behind their backs in a mocking manner. Suka looked at the things in the boxes. The blue veins on his forehead bulged and he felt a little uneasy. He was not worried about what would happen to these bandits. He was just worried that his Langjun would get addicted to beating bandits and get carried away. Although, he also felt good about it. Meng Hun sat on the chair of the second master of the bandit village. In contrast, Suka looked much more gentle. Meng Hun asked in a fierce voice, "Langjun, what should we do with these people? Are they all like this or just like this?" Meng Hun made two very obvious gestures. When the bandits saw this, they all shivered, their legs trembled, and tears and mucus flowed down their cheeks. "My lords, please spare my life. I was forced into this den of thieves. I've never done anything evil in the past. Please spare my life. I have children and old people to take care of. I'm responsible for the family's livelihood. If I die, how can my 60-year-old mother and my 3-year-old son survive? Please? I was also forced into this place by that black-hearted man. Please spare my life." In order to survive, one by one they began to act pitiful. Some desperately kowtowed and begged for mercy, some wanted to sell the secret of the bandit stronghold in order to get a chance to live, and some people spoke with tears in their eyes, trying to move people with their emotions. Those tragic stories made people feel sad. However, no matter what they said or how they acted, Suku just looked at them coldly. Meng Hun looked like it was none of his business. The real mastermind, Jiang Pingji, looked at each and every one of them with a faint smile, as if she was watching a monkey show. "Don't be in a hurry to deal with these people." Jiang Pingji put her fingers together and pretended to be thinking. Then she turned her head and asked Suku, "Are all the things found in this village here? How much grain and money are there in total?" Suku lowered his head and looked at the bamboo slip that he had made some simple records on. He said, "There are about 300 dawn of grain, and about 700 taels of money and silk." This was only a rough estimate. After all, they were in a hurry, so they would have to wait until they got back. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, 300 dawn of grain, 700 taels of silver? That's more than your Longjuan's monthly allowance for a few years." Suka secretly rolled his eyes. In terms of money, Jiang Pingji's monthly allowance in the Luz was indeed not much. It was only a few taels a month. But after taking into account the snacks, brushes, ink, paper, inkstones, clothes and fabrics, and especially the expensive bamboo paper outside, How could she be considered poor? Pack up and bring all these things back. Jiang Pingji smiled faintly and waved her hand. She looked more like a bandit than the head of a bandit. Brothers, you've worked hard today. When we get back, each of you will get 1 tael of silver and 1 jean of pork. You should make up for your hard training. As for where the expenses would come from, of course, it would be the confiscated bandit supplies. How many people were there in the troop? It was just a small reward which was not painful at all. Instead, it could win people's hearts and stimulate their fighting spirit. How could it not be worth it? In addition, each corporal get 1 more share. Of course, the treatment of ordinary troops and corporal had to be different so that they could clearly realize that if they wanted to get better treatment, they had to train hard and climb up. Write it down. Su Ku nodded while writing. Jiang Pingji naturally did not forget Su Ku and Meng Hun. Each of them got 10 taels of silver. In addition, Meng Hun got a few more jars of wine and 5 jean of pork, while Su Ku got a few bolts of good quality cotton cloth and some health herbs of equal value. The arrangement was made purely because Meng Hun was single. He had to feed himself and Su Ku had to take care of his aunt. In front of a group of bandits, Jiang Pingji's attitude was particularly natural. It was as if she was not distributing the money in someone else's pocket, but her own. Well, it did belong to her now. She waved her hand and Su Ku understood. He asked his men to move the big boxes to the open space. Next, it was time to deal with the bandits. You bandits, kill me if you want. The leader of the bandits who was captured had a gloomy face. Everyone? The audience in the streaming room watched happily as Jiang Pingji distributed the loot. Then they were shocked by the words of the leader of the bandits. Lanlian Junzi, awesome. That's awesome. Lao Siji Lianming, haha host, did you hear that? Even the leader of the bandits called you a bandit. What does that mean? Muyu Qingfeng, indifferent face. It means that the host is the leader of the bandits. The bandits worked hard to save their belongings by robbing merchants, but the host took them all at once. Wasn't he the bandit of the bandits? Kill me if you want. Jiang Pingji clapped her hands and smiled. You have guts. Then go to hell. Everyone was silent. They thought that Jiang Pingji would appreciate the man's courage, but they didn't expect that she would say such a thing. In fact, you won't survive even if you don't say it. Jiang Pingji sneered and broke the bandit's neck. The blood from the bandit's mouth and tongue stained the back of her hand. Nongqin quickly handed her a handkerchief. She took it with her left hand and threw the bandit's body aside with her right hand. She wiped the blood on her hand with the handkerchief without frowning. Now, who wants to tell me that I can kill you if I want? Who dares to say that? The strong and cold aura was suffocating. The bandits had an illusion that they would be the next one. Capable people are tough and unyielding. That's worth appreciating. But a scum dares to challenge me. Who else but him will die? Jiang Pingji curled her lips and wiped the blood on the back of her hand. She put away the handkerchief instead of throwing it on the ground. She glanced at the crowd, but no one dared to look at her. People cherished their lives, even those bandits who risked their lives. Meng Hun followed behind Jiang Pingji with a knife in his hand. If she frowned at someone, Meng Hun would cut off that person's head. Without the slightest sign and without the slightest bit of preparation, the group of bandits were scared out of their wits. Their crotches heated up, and many of them were scared to the point of urinating. The scene was silent. Only the increasingly bloody smell and the occasional sound of blood splashing could be heard. Heads flew and fell to the ground. The audience in the live streaming room was so scared that they even forgot to send messages. Chapter 218. Do you know why I killed them? Jiang Pingji walked around and finally returned to her seat. She put her fingers together and put on an inscrutable look. Because they deserve to die. If I don't kill them now, do I have to keep them alive until the new year? Pigs could be slaughtered and eaten during the new year. What value could these people create by keeping them alive? Jiang Pingji said, there are 3 things I hate the most in my life. The first is betrayal, the second is rape, and the third is deceit. No matter who it is, I don't need to care about their feelings when they meet these 3 bottom lines. Not to mention killing them, even if I cut off all of their heads, who could say anything about it? Bandits should be prepared to lose their heads. However, there's a way out for you now. The bandits who were killed could not have betrayed Jiang Pingji or deceived her. The only reason was that they had a history of rape. Many bandits came to their senses and their faces turned pale. They thought about it carefully and it seemed to be true. Those who were still alive today, although they weren't good people, at least they weren't involved in this. It wasn't that they didn't want to, it was purely because those women were snatched away and given to the bandits who had a reputation first. They were just small minions running errands. Those delicate and tender young ladies would not live long enough for them to have a taste of them. They would have long been toyed to death. I know there are no good people among you, Jiang Pingji said again. She instantly extinguished the wishful thinking that the bandits had just had. If we take them in, who knows if we will raise a tiger in our bosom. After all, you can cause some trouble if you gather together. What Jiang Pingji said was actually what Suku was worried about. The size of their troops was too small. If they took in all the bandits, the consequences would be unimaginable if the bandits gathered together and caused trouble. It is impossible to know what is in a man's heart. You bandits cannot be trusted at all. So, I am very troubled now. Should I let you all live or should I kill all of you to prevent future troubles? Jiang Pingji smiled and showed her white teeth. The bandits were so scared that they did not dare to make a sound. Suku thought about it and stepped out. Langjun, if we kill all of them, I am afraid it will harm the heavens. I have a plan. Jiang Pingji said, tell me about it. Suku deliberately raised his voice. Why don't we keep them for a month? If they perform well, we'll give them a chance to turn over a new leaf. If they don't, we'll sell them to the broker house. Now that the people are in dire straits, it is not advisable to kill too much. If they were sold to a human trafficker, they would at least be able to get a few taels of silver. It could be considered as squeezing the last bit of value out of them. Suku knew his Longjuan's temperament very well. If he could avoid being taken advantage of, he would not allow himself to be taken advantage of. Although these bandits were enslaved, they were still alive. If they were lucky, their lives would be stable in the future. No matter what, being alive was everything. The bandits were frightened again and again. At this time, they no longer had the slightest intention to resist, or rather, even if they did not dare to show it. Jiang Pingji and her people killed without hesitation. They were more like a gang of bandits than them. They were bandits, but Jiang Pingji and her gang were robbers. Jiang Pingji nodded as she listened. Soon after, she pretended to be distressed, and asked, but what if they secretly gather to cause trouble? Suku answered coldly, kill them without mercy. The words kill without mercy caused many bandits to tremble uncontrollably, and their entire bodies trembled. Jiang Pingji smiled and immediately asked the bandits in a gentle way, did you hear that? If you are willing to live, I will let you live for a month. If your performance is satisfactory, you can live. If not, you will be directly sold to the slave house. If you dare to gather people to cause trouble and secretly violate my taboo. Haha, look at your brothers lying next to you. After that, Jiang Pingji patted the armrest of the main seat with her palm, and the wooden armrest immediately collapsed. In a few words, she extinguished the little bit of luck and unwillingness in the hearts of these bandits. The shadow of death would always linger around them. At this time, a troop secretly whispered to Nongqin. After hearing it, a trace of suppressed anger appeared on her face. Jiang Pingji noticed it and asked her, what's wrong, Nongqin? Langjun, there is a cellar in this bandit stronghold which is full of kidnapped children and women. Cellar? Jiang Pingji looked at those bandits who were still alive and said coldly, what's going on here? Several bandits blushed and wanted to say something, but because of the previous shock and nervousness, they couldn't say a word. A clever one quickly kowtowed and said, the women and children in the cellar have nothing to do with us. How could there be any law when they were bandits who robbed houses? They robbed everything they could, including money and people. A group of bandits, all male, naturally had physiological needs. When they saw a beautiful woman, they naturally had sexual desires. Jiang Pingji sneered and said, go and have a look. Watch these people closely. If anyone dares to struggle, kill him directly. Her words made those who wanted to beg for mercy stiffen, and they dared not make any noise. The air in the cellar was very turbid, and there was a lot of excrement in the corner. Smelling it made people feel like stomach acid was surging. There were 2 haggard women and 3 timid 7- or 8-year-old girls hiding in the cellar. The women's clothes were ragged, and the ragged material could only cover the important parts. The exposed skin was bruised, full of violence and ambiguity, which made people know at a glance that she had suffered a nightmare. The audience in the live streaming room was still immersed in the previous fear. Seeing such a miserable scene, they all sent bullet screens. Those bandits should die thousands of times. As for the 3 children, they were so thin that their bones could be seen. Their chins were very sharp, their cheeks were sunken, and their hair was dry and yellow, curled into clumps. No one knew how long they hadn't been washed. They were so thin that their eyes were especially big. This, Suku followed them and knew what had happened. He was suddenly speechless and didn't know what to say. It was not a peaceful era. It seemed to be flashy, but there were endless grievances and darkness behind it. The women and children locked in the cellar were just one of thousands of examples. Bring these people back as well? Jiang Pingji's voice was very gentle, but those people were trembling at the same time as if she was about to kill. Suku asked, if I take them back, what should I do with them? Chapter 219. Can a man give birth to a child? Last month, 1,275 plus monthly votes. Jiang Pingji didn't know how to raise useless people. She didn't have that kind of compassion. She had to ensure that the people under her could create value. Otherwise they were useless. What was the point of keeping them? Therefore, even if she wanted to take them back, she wanted them to create value and contribute to the labor force. Suku calculated in his mind and said, I'll listen to you. You don't have enough food and money? Jiang Pingji asked. She didn't want to rely too much on the lose. Except for the initial capital, she had to find ways to get the rest of the expenses. For example, the money she won from the Fulai gambling house. She left some for Nongqin and gave the rest to Suku to raise the troops. If he told her that he was short of money, she would probably go to the gambling house to have fun. Suku shook his head. We still have enough. But your goal is not limited to this. We should always plan well so that we don't have enough money when the time comes. How many people were there in the troops? Even if they counted the bandits who hadn't been trained yet, there were only about 100 of them. The expenses were not high. Jiang Pingji gave them plenty of money, not to mention the loot they got from the robbery that night. It was enough to support the troops for a few years. However, his Longjuan's ambition was not limited to that. It was impossible to satisfy a troop of only 100 people. That was a pain in the ass. As a bookkeeper, Suku naturally had to make arrangements in all aspects. He tried his best to divide one coin into 2 coins. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms and looked at Suku from head to toe. She said, not bad. You look like a bookkeeper. Suku didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Langjun, please don't make fun of me. To be honest, he used to think that a bookkeeper's job was easy until he met his Langjun. Whether a bookkeeper's job was easy or not depended on whether the boss was noisy or not. Jiang Pingji left a few people behind to guard the bandits and took them away in batches. As for the treasures that they had collected, they were transported back. While the sky was still dark, they had to leave as soon as possible to avoid alerting the other bandits. There were too many bandits around Hejin County. If their actions were exposed and alerted, it would not be easy next time. Xiaoyu, go back and see if anyone is injured. Give them more supplements so that they won't be disappointed. On the way back, Jiang Pingji suddenly said, there are rewards and punishments. Good and bad punishments are clear. That way people won't be agitated and we can nip the hidden dangers in the bud. Suku nodded. Don't worry, Langjun. I will definitely get it done. After a busy night, the troops went to sleep in batches. Another group of people were guarding the bandits who were still tied up to prevent them from causing trouble. The farm was large enough and there were many empty rooms. Suku ordered his men to clean up the other 2 large rooms and turn them into bunk beds. He gave each captured bandit a bed. In order to prevent them from rebelling, they were carefully separated and assigned to the previous troops to be regrouped with each other. Because there were more people, the daily expenses also increased. Suku still had a lot of miscellaneous things to do and he only finished it at noon. Suku had seen the Liu family's internal account book recording method and felt that it was very clear, so he simply copied it and used it on the troops. The account book was clear and concise, and the accounts were clear and transparent. It was very useful. He calculated the rewards that should be distributed and was silently calculating how many pigs to buy in his heart. His aunt's voice came from outside the house. Aunt, why are you here? Suku put down what he was doing and got up to open the door. Didn't the master reward me with a few bolts of cloth? I think it's not bad. I plan to measure it and make 2 sets of spring clothes for you. Suku's aunt was a very gentle woman, but she worked hard all year round to make a living. Her hands were full of frostbite, and her eyes were much worse under the hardship. It was a bit difficult for her to sew, but Suku didn't stop her. After all, it was the elders' kindness. How could the younger generation refuse? Besides, the farm was too idle. If she didn't find something for herself to do, she would be very bored every day. Suku welcomed her in. Why can you only do it for me? Aunt, you have to take care of yourself. Hey Aunt, how old are you? Why are you dressed so well? You are working for the master, so you should dress decently. His aunt disagreed. Ah, you wear the same few sets of clothes. It shows how much the master mistreats you. Suku coughed awkwardly and said, Aunt Ku brought you here to take care of you when you are old. Don't do the hard work. Make new clothes that need to be made and wear what needs to be worn. There is no need to save. Now that Langjun thinks highly of me, I will have a better life in the future. His aunt glanced at him and said, How can anyone live like you? Aunt, you don't have to save for me. In the future, I will buy a few maidservants to serve you. I will treat you like the old madam. You are talking nonsense like you used to. Don't talk about buying maidservants to serve me. If you can bring a maidservant back to continue the Su family's lineage, I will have to worship my ancestors. His aunt put her hands together, and Suku didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This matter is not urgent. When I find someone I like, I will definitely tell Aunt and let you talk to the matchmaker. Suku's aunt was an open-minded and optimistic woman. She didn't rush Suku when he said so. However, there were still some things that needed to be said to him. A family like ours is not picky. If there is someone suitable and considerate to you, you can marry her. Suku just smiled and didn't give a clear answer. His mind was not on this. He had to finish the things at hand first. At least he had a foundation to establish himself. Besides, his mother's mourning period was not over yet. It was too early to talk about marriage. System. Streamer Jiang Pingji's semi-interactive live broadcast of bandit suppression in the deep mountains, 1, has come to a perfect end. Dear viewers, are you satisfied with this? A. Satisfied. B. Average. C. Not satisfied. It was time to conclude the voting again. This time, satisfaction was within expectations. After all, not everyone in the live broadcast could accept her killing, and she didn't want to change her plan for the audience. She thought that it would be good enough if she could pass the satisfaction level. She didn't expect to get a silver treasure chest. When she heard the system message, she opened it directly and chose to draw a prize. It was another card. She clamped the card with 2 fingers and turned it over. There was a picture of a fat white baby curled up on the card. When she saw the small line of words at the bottom, her face was about to crack. Easy pregnancy pill, the young phoenix's voice is auspicious. Once chosen by the king, she will be doted on. However, no flower will bloom for 100 days. She will only sigh at the changing heart of her husband. If she has a baby by her side, she will definitely stand at the top of the harem and look at the flowers with a smile. Usage, take it before sex. Jiang Pingji chuckled. System, can you be any more F*** useless? The system was about to explode. Jiang Pingji. That's enough. I am the harem intrigue system. What else can I give you? Jiang Pingji clicked her tongue and took the card. Is there a system that allows men to have children? System, as a harem intrigue system, you don't even have the ability to have children. How dare you say you are not useless? System. Chapter 220. System, what kind of decent system would do something like that? It was so pissed off by its terrible host. Jiang Pingji only responded with a cold snort. System. How could it be considered decent? A famous item to attract men's interest in their own bodies? An easy pregnancy pill to solidify men's love for them? Ah, it was really decent. It was a typical example of a whore trying to maintain her chastity. Jiang Pingji glanced at the 2 cards in her backpack. She seemed to be deep in thought. After a long time she said, Speaking of which, it seems that in the past half a month, you haven't sent me a real-time trigger mission. What? Did you secretly uninstall this section? System clicked its tongue and said, How is that possible? After the section is loaded, you can only uninstall it after the second system upgrade. As for why there hasn't been a single trigger mission. Honestly, host, tell me seriously, how many times have you gone out in the past half a month? Other than going to the farm, she would stay at home and read. It was so boring that it was hard for the livestream viewers to watch. Jiang Pingji pinched her chin and said, What you mean is that if I go out more often, I might trigger a mission? System answered in a business-like manner, In theory, yes. The so-called real-time trigger mission is when the system analyzes the people and things that the host has experienced and determines that there is a need for a mission. Only then will it send a mission to the host. The more people you know and the more things you encounter, the higher the possibility of triggering a mission. But I suggest that you let nature take its course. Jiang Pingji laughed and asked, Let nature take its course? Yes, the system just did an analysis and found that you have the intention to go against the system. This is not good for you. The first time the system issued a real-time triggered mission, Not only did the host decisively refuse to carry it out, but he even calmly accepted the punishment. After the mission was completed, the system was 99% sure that the host wanted to cause trouble again. Don't be so paranoid. No matter what, we're in a temporary partnership. We're in the same boat. What good will it do me if I deliberately go against you? Jiang Pingji spread her hands to show that she had no ill intentions. The system's answer was silence. Although it hadn't been with Jiang Pingji for long, the system already understood that it could only trust half of what she said. After a long while, the system finally spoke. I am very happy that the host can finally understand the pains of being a system. I will not harm you. I hope that we can get along well in the future. The system and Jiang Pingji seemed to have reached an alliance and restored a harmonious relationship. In fact, they were like two businessmen shaking hands with a smile. Each of them held a sharp dagger behind their backs, ready to plot against the other at any time and then find an opportunity to stab the other in the back. Jiang Pingji only returned to the Lu residence when it was close to dinner time. When she returned, she heard from the gatekeeper that Lu Shi was waiting for her in the study. Frowning slightly, she lightly said, I understand. I'll go see my father now. Why was Lu Shi looking for her? Jiang Pingji had a vague guess. It was either related to the bandit suppression the night before or there was news from Ming County in Song Prefecture. Although she did not take the initiative to tell Lu Shi about the bandit extermination, she did not deliberately hide it from him. The farm was kept a secret from outsiders but not from Lu Shi. It was normal for him to know about it. As soon as he arrived at the study, he saw Lu Shi sitting upright with a slight frown on his face. His fingers were flipping through the booklet on the table. He was engrossed in reading. As usual, Jiang Pingji first saluted him. Then she said, Father, what can I do for you? Lu Shi then raised his head and gestured for Jiang Pingji to sit beside him. You. Lu Shi was about to say something but he suddenly stopped. He looked a little hesitant. Are you hurt? Jiang Pingji was sure that was not what Lu Shi wanted to say before. She shook her head and said, No, I'm not hurt. A gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall. But I know you well. It's useless to persuade you. Lu Shi sighed softly. Then he smiled with some pride. Most of those bandits are the kind of people who only know how to steal and steal. They don't know the word loyalty, and they don't know the word loyalty. I won't object to your decision, but you have to be careful in case they plot against you behind your back. Jiang Pingji said, Of course. The troops are short of manpower. If we take in more bandits than the original troops, there will be hidden dangers. But I've found a reason to get rid of those who are easy to cause trouble. Although the remaining bandits are slippery and have dirty hands, they are easy to suppress and intimidate. Even if they gather together, they won't cause any big trouble. Lu Shi heard that and slightly tightened his hand on his left knee. Then he secretly loosened it. Originally, he thought that his daughter would not know the severity of the situation and keep a group of hidden dangers by her side. It would be terrible if she was bitten by them. Therefore, after receiving the news, he hurriedly wanted to see her and give her a reminder. However, he did not expect that this child was even more vicious and merciless than he thought. But there are exceptions to everything. The human heart is more complicated and changeable. Maybe there are times when I'm wrong. Jiang Pingji smiled faintly and said, Xiaoyu did a good job. He separated the bandits. If that's the case, the bandits still dare to cause trouble. Speaking of this, Jiang Pingji's lips suddenly curved into a bloodthirsty smile. It's better to kill them directly. They couldn't create value, couldn't contribute to the labor force, and even dragged her down. Why not get rid of them early? Why keep them? I'm relieved that you think so. Lu Shi sighed softly. His hanging heart slowly calmed down. He was not afraid of anything. He was afraid that his child was too soft-hearted, or too proud and conceited. She could do big things well but stumble over small things. Father, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Lu Shi nodded and immediately looked at her with hesitation. If that's the case, are you still going out these days? Lu Shi was hinting at her to ask if she was still going to find trouble with the bandits. Jiang Pingji understood in an instant. No, I'm going to digest and absorb what we've collected. It's more important to have quality than quantity. If the troops are too bloated, the overall strength will decrease instead of increase. It's not worth the loss. She planned to let the bandits undergo mandatory training for 3 to 5 days. Then she would see the results and screen them one by one. The useful ones would be kept, and the less useful ones would be sold to the broker or let them work in the fields. Anyway, she did not keep idle people here. Seeing that Lu Shi was still there, she asked, Father, do you have any other orders? Lu Shi lowered his eyes and asked in a low voice, when did you kill Meng Liang? Lu Shi knew that his daughter would do what she wanted to do, but he didn't expect that she would kill Meng Liang without hesitation. If he hadn't thought of Meng Liang on a whim, he would have thought that he was still alive. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "How long has Coach Meng been here?" "Meng Liang has been dead for a few days." Chapter 221. One of the only father, you don't know about this? Jiang Pingji thought that with Lu Shi's attention to her, nothing that happened around her could be hidden from his eyes. Lu Shi shook his head. Ever since Jiang Pingji asked Su Ku to convey her attitude, he had let his guard down. He did not expect that his daughter would send Meng Liang to the afterlife. Did she need to be so efficient? "I'm not omniscient and omnipotent. How can I know everything?" Lu Shi felt a slight pain in his forehead, but he was already dead. What happened was done and there was no turning back. He might as well think about what to do next. "You used Meng Liang's life as a favor to Meng Hun. Based on your temperament you must have gotten more benefits than that. Did you blackmail the Mengs?" "Blackmail? That was not a good way to put it. It was called asking for benefits openly." Jiang Pingji revealed a little of her plan. Lu Shi looked at her helplessly. "Didn't I give you the list before? If you still need more, go to the accounts room and get more." Lu Shi said with some forbearance. "You are the only child in the family. These are all yours. Why do you have to be so calculative with me?" To put it nicely, his daughter had her own abilities. To put it bluntly, she was estranged from him. That was not what Lu Shi wanted. Jiang Pingji was silent for a while. If it were in the past, she would not have bothered to explain. But now, she felt that it was not a good idea to do so. "Father, you misunderstood me. It's not that I am calculative with you. I just don't want to be involved with the aristocratic families." Jiang Pingji hesitated for a while. Lu Shi looked at her in shock. She said, "Starting from scratch, it will be easy to distinguish in the future." Whether it was Su Ku, Meng Hun, or Qiguan Rang, all three of them had one thing in common: they had low social status. It wasn't that she couldn't attract people of high status. In fact, as long as she put up the banner of Lu Shi's son, she could also attract people of a certain status with Lu Shi's halo. As the son, she could also attract people of a certain status. Why didn't she do that? Because she did not want to. If she got involved too early, she would be passive in the future. Jiang Pingji's goal was very clear, so in order to achieve it, she needed to formulate a series of plans. Considering the current social climate, she decisively gave up the more convenient path of relying on her father. The benefits in the early stages were indeed great, but what about the middle and later stages? She wanted to nurture her own team and talents, not those who were only thinking about clan bloodlines. Don't be fooled by how those aristocratic families boasted about their family name and bloodline, and how they preached their loyalty. In fact, for the benefit of the clan and for their own benefit, under special circumstances, they were willing to give up their backbone, reservedness, and righteousness. Are they like a piece of poison wrapped in sugar? Medicine, at first it tasted sweet and greasy, but when the sugar coating was finished, only poison was left. It looked tempting, but it was extremely delicious. The path she was going to take would inevitably touch upon the most fatal interest of the aristocratic families: education. Why were aristocratic families called aristocratic families? This was because they had money in their hands and food in their granaries. They monopolized education and made studying a privilege for a minority of people. They also indirectly monopolized the imperial court. Talents were all from aristocratic families. 1 generation, 2 generation, 3 generation. After generations, the officials in the imperial court were more or less related by blood or marriage. When this group of people worked together, how could the emperor have a say? Did they want to attack them? Haha, they didn't mind firing the emperor first. Jiang Pingji had enough of this ignorant era. Out of 100 people she met outside, 99 of them were illiterate. In addition to education, there was also the land. Were the farmers in Dongqing not hardworking? They were very hardworking. Jiang Pingji was very clear about this. They worked before dawn and only returned home with their hoes when the sun set. They worked from dawn to dusk, and they couldn't even save a surplus of food throughout the year. If they were unfortunate enough to encounter a natural disaster, they couldn't eat a full meal throughout the year. Perhaps a large number of people would starve to death. Starving people everywhere. Was this just a word? This was a living hell on earth. But why were they so hardworking but still unable to eat enough and wear warm clothes? Was the land too barren, or was the tax exploitation too vicious? Although Jiang Pingji was criticized by the system for not going out much, in fact she was trying her best to understand this era from books and understand their lives through chatting with the farmers. The more she understood, the clearer Jiang Pingji was about the path she wanted to take. This path was very long, but she would try her best to plan and perfect it. Obviously, in the path she planned, the aristocratic families were not allowed to interfere in the beginning. If they were, the development in the middle and later stages would be more restrained. She wanted to promote education so that all children could study, regardless of their status. Would the aristocratic families be willing? She wanted to reform the land so that all the hardworking people could reap the benefits they deserved. Would the aristocratic families be willing? Her ideas touched the most important thing in their lives. They would use all their strength to oppose it. When the time came, would they listen to her or would she listen to others? As a son of an aristocratic family, Jiang Pingji's ideas were simply unorthodox. She was a living freak. Why? Lushi held back for a long time before he asked these few words with trembling lips. Jiang Pingji asked calmly, "Father, do you think there is a difference between being the only one and being one?" She was very clear that because of her cheap mother's influence and spoilers, Lushi had long been mentally prepared for this reality. In terms of stirring up trouble, Lushi fully supported her and supported her to take that path. Therefore she wanted to have a frank talk with the other party. The only one. Lushi was smart and instantly understood what she meant. What was the only one? There was only one since ancient times. What was one? One among all the living things. The meaning of Jiang Pingji's words was very clear. She wanted to step on the aristocratic families, promote education, reform the land, and enlighten the people. To the small group of people in the aristocratic families, she was indeed hateful. But to all the living things and people in the future, she might be the only one to reach this step since ancient times. Those who came later would not be able to catch up. Jiang Pingji smiled suddenly and said confidently, "If father thinks that I am disobedient and unfilial, it is still not too late." She was still young. If Lushi wanted to deal with her, there was nothing she could do, right? Of course, if Lushi wanted to keep her, he had to have the ability to do so. Lushi choked. The shock in his heart turned into helplessness. "You know that I won't hurt you. If not for the fact that you have a strong backing, why would you say this to me?" Because she was sure of it, she dared to talk to him frankly. "To your father, there is nothing more important than your mother, you, and your two elder brothers. Besides, even if the aristocratic families were weakened as the future royal family, who would treat the Lu family unfairly? Lushi was a smart person. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.